My Star Empire. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 551, Imperial Glory. The defense capability of this battleship is its biggest highlight. The one-time dimensional armor directly covers its entire shell, and all weapons are on a flip-up shell, just to avoid destroying the integrity of this layer of armor. In addition, all the internal parts of this spaceship are made of ring-world metal, and its overall strength is the strongest among the current battleships in our empire. In addition to the main gun, this battleship can completely use its own hull to hide and destroy the enemy's battleship, because the energy generated by the collision is far from reaching the upper limit of its dimensional armor saturation. The chief designer's eyes lit up when he said this. And this design was what he was most satisfied with. Very good, perfect the design immediately. I want to see this battleship within a year. Mingze nodded with satisfaction. If this battleship is manufactured, then the Empire can use this battleship to directly penetrate the heartland of the Sith Empire. The name of this battleship is the Imperial Glory. In the future, all the ships in this series will be independent and become the Glory class. Mingze left the design room after speaking. A few days later, when Mingze was enjoying a rare vacation in the palace, he suddenly received a communication request from the housekeeper on Earth. What's wrong? You came back in person, Mingze frowned and asked. Your Majesty, the Abnormal Affairs Management Bureau has discovered that the backbone of our company is all androids. They suspect that we are related to the abnormal fluctuations in space not long ago, and ask you to go to one of their bases. The android housekeeper was interrupted by Mingze before he finished speaking. Send my guard robot to eliminate them, and pay attention to protecting the abnormal items they keep. Mingze's tone was extremely calm. A small organization on Earth dared to order him, so he just wiped it out. Also, immediately order the androids to expand the influence of our company and eradicate all unknown forces on this Earth. Mingze tapped the table lightly and continued. As you wish. After the housekeeper saluted, Mingze closed the communication. A few days later, the housekeeper returned to Earth with the next team heading to the second world. On the day he returned, all the guard robots lurking on Earth took action and rushed towards the various branches and bases of the Abnormal Affairs Management Bureau. On a small island in Australia, a silver aircraft suddenly fell from the sky. The moment the aircraft landed, its appearance changed into a normal human woman. The Abnormal Affairs Management Bureau's codename Kangaroo Base cleanup operation has begun. Executor, Guard J002, the woman muttered to herself and turned into a pool of liquid and seeped into the ground from a 10-centimeter diameter vent next to her. 100 meters underground on this island, in a honeycomb-shaped underground building, dozens of researchers from the Abnormal Affairs Management Bureau were busy working. The purpose of this base is to study objects that do not belong to the Earth that appear all over the world, and the various technologies obtained from them will be sold to governments or large companies. By selling these research technologies, a large amount of funds were provided to the Management Bureau. Although various countries also provided financial and equipment assistance to the Management Bureau, this little assistance was a drop in the bucket for the tens of thousands of agents of the Management Bureau all over the world. In the nearly 100 years since the administration appeared in this world, it has built dozens of scientific research bases like the code-named Kangaroo Base around the world. However, they will soon cease to exist. A pool of silver unknown liquid passed through dozens of fans in the ventilation system and ignored the laser net used to eliminate foreign objects, and came to the corridor of the scientific research base. After the silver liquid fell from the ventilation duct, it condensed into a human shape again, and two sharp blades stretched out from her hands. Who are you? Two patrolling guards suddenly discovered the intruder and pointed their electromagnetic rifles at the woman. Those who humiliate the Empire will be killed without mercy, the woman whispered softly, and the two sharp blades were ejected and pierced through the two guards wearing heavy protective clothing. After killing the two sharp blades flew back to the woman's arms and merged into one again. The woman quickly walked into the base. The system in the base had just been invaded by her, and no matter how she killed, it would not trigger the alarm. The knife rose and fell, one person every 10 steps, and soon all the scientific researchers and guards on the first floor were killed. Damn it! They must be from Singularity Technology. Fortunately, this room is physically isolated from the local area network outside. At this time, In a room at the bottom of the scientific research base, a middle-aged man suddenly opened his eyes. The dozens of green human-shaped symbols representing the base staff on the screen on his retina had dimmed by more than half. The base activates the self-destruct device, password kangaroo's bag. After the middle-aged man gave the order to the computer beside him, he turned and quickly went to a chair in the corner of the room. At this time, a red countdown suddenly began on the computer monitor. 3 minutes left before the self-destruction. Please evacuate as soon as possible. The middle-aged man sat on the seat as quickly as he could and fastened his seat belt. Layers of metal shells began to extend from the walls on both sides of the seat, wrapping the seat tightly in it. 3, 2, 1. Fire. Flames suddenly spurted out from the bottom of the metal shell that wrapped the seat, and a channel opened in the ceiling above the metal shell. If you look at the hologram of this base, this pipeline is located exactly in the center of the base, not connected to any other part of the base, and is an independent individual, surrounded by armor plates and more than 10 meters thick rock layers. The metal capsule rushed into the pipe from the room under the impetus of the flames, and a few seconds later it flew into the sky from a puddle on the ground. After 3 minutes, the earth trembled violently, a large amount of dust poured out from the vents, the ground of the island began to collapse, and the surrounding seawater began to pour into the large pit formed by the collapse on the island. Tens of minutes later, a ball of metal liquid rushed out from the puddle, and the metal liquid gathered into a woman again. The cleanup mission failed, and a target escaped. The woman looked at the sky in the distance and sighed and whispered. At this time, the metal cabin was flying towards the American continent. The middle-aged man in the cabin connected the communication of several other S-level directors. My base was attacked. How are you? The middle-aged man asked the others. Our base was also attacked. At present, 5 S-level directors have lost contact. The opponent's combat effectiveness is extremely strong, and they are familiar with the locations of all our bases. We must activate the device. Several directors looked at each other seriously and nodded. Chapter 552, Time and Space Gate Restart. A few days later, over Antarctica. The 4 thrusters of a white jet suddenly turned and aimed a jet nozzle at the ground. The plane began to circle and land on an ice field. When the plane landed, 7 directors walked down from the plane, came to a protruding ice block, and pressed the rings on each of their fingers on the ice block. A green light suddenly shot out from the ice block. After scanning the 7 rings, accompanied by the violent vibration of the ice block under their feet, this circular ice block with a radius of 20 meters began to sink underground with them. As this huge lifting platform disguised as an ice block descended deeper and deeper, the top of everyone's head had become pitch black with only a ray of light. A creaking sound came from the bottom of the elevator, and the elevator stopped in a huge round hall. In front of the round hall stood a more than 10-meter high ice sculpture. The person in the painting was an old man. If you look closely, you will find that the old man's appearance is surprisingly similar to Li Ming's. When Li Ming's gets old, he should look like this. The 7 directors present were obviously coming here for the first time. When they first saw the ice sculpture, they couldn't help but feel that it looked familiar. However, they didn't think much about it. This base was built when the Abnormal Affairs Management Bureau was first established. The purpose was to reverse the situation when encountering a crisis that could destroy the Management Bureau. However, since no major crisis has occurred in the nearly 100 years since the establishment of the Management Bureau, this place has never been opened. The 3rd generation of S-level directors of the Management Bureau still found this place according to the instructions left by the SS-level director 20 years ago. The 7 directors hesitated for a moment, and then inserted the ring into 7 of the 12 holes in the ice sculpture. After a few seconds, the cave began to vibrate gently, and the ice sculpture in front of the 7 people began to separate from the middle and slowly open to both sides like a door, revealing a corridor hundreds of meters long. The 7 directors swallowed their saliva and stepped into the corridor. After they all passed, the ice sculpture merged together again, as if it had never been separated. The 7 people walked carefully through the corridor and came to a hall of tens of thousands of square meters. Above the hall was a chandelier composed of thousands of slender crystals that were glowing. In the center of the hall was a raised circular platform. There was nothing on the platform, only 12 ring holes on the control console next to the platform. The 7 directors took off their rings and inserted them into the ring holes. The rings seemed to be sucked and sank into the control console. More than half of the secret keys of the administration have been detected. The Doomsday Crisis Plan has been activated. The universe connector is about to be opened. An electronic voice suddenly echoed in the hall. The platform in front of everyone suddenly began to crack, and pieces of metal fragments separated from the platform and floated into the air. The Morning Star project has been activated. The stellar energy extraction device is about to be activated. 3, 2, 1. The stellar energy extraction device is activated. The geographical coordinates of the Earth are about to be exposed. With the electronic voices, the metal fragments floating above the platform assembled themselves into a 30-meter-high circular arch. At this time, the people in the night hemisphere suddenly looked up at the moon above their heads. They found that the shape of the moon had changed. The spherical moon split open like a petal, revealing a circular core that shone with a golden light. At this time, the top leaders of various countries on Blue Star were already in chaos. They just found out that the moon above their heads had begun to deform. According to the images taken by our company's satellite, the moon is actually a huge space station. Just now, this space station that has been silent for countless billions of years suddenly changed. It is changing its form. The latest report sent back by a reporter's observatory is that the moon has transformed into a strange building with half a sphere and half a petal, and it has begun to rotate and point the petals towards the sun. The latest news sent back by a reporter in space is that with the deformation of the moon, the alien threat theory has occupied the mainstream thought of society. People believe that aliens have been observing the development of the Earth in the dark, and now for some unknown reason they are about to destroy the Earth, just as various news media, websites, and major radio stations were frantically reporting that the moon had deformed. Leaders of various countries gathered in front of the monitor to observe the latest changes of the moon through satellites. Light. Dazzling light, a beam of light tens of kilometers thick shot from the moon into the sun. Just when everyone thought that the moon space station wanted to destroy the sun, the flames on the surface of the sun began to spread toward the moon along this beam of light. As the flames on the sun were completely transmitted to the ring of the moon, the entire surface of the moon suddenly became extremely hot, and all the moon's oil and rocks were instantly liquefied. Under the action of an unknown force, the liquefied solution flowed toward the vertex of the side of the moon that still maintained its spherical shape, and finally disappeared into a hole. At this time, the surface of the moon had completely changed, and a huge silver shining space station was hanging in the sky. Everyone on the ground could see the flashing lights and the ravine-filled surface of the space station with their naked eyes. At this time, the 7 directors underground in the South Pole did not know what they had just done. They were staring blankly at the arch in the middle of the round platform. Just now, a beam of light suddenly shot into the arch from the crystal chandelier above the hall, and then a white light curtain appeared in the arch. Signals from other universes' Abnormal Affairs Administration bureaus have been detected and are being connected to the main database. The main database has been connected. The Administration Bureau is currently under threat and has been reported to the Abnormal Affairs Administration Multidimensional Universe Headquarters. Please wait for the news. As the electronic voice finished speaking, the walls around the hall began to light up continuously, and pictures appeared on the surrounding walls. Devices of unknown function also began to rise from the ground. The 7 directors present were shocked. What the hell is this? How come they don't know that their administration bureau has such a powerful background? This Abnormal Affairs Administration Multidimensional Universe Headquarters sounds so awesome and golden. Could it be that they are actually aliens? No, they are indeed Earthlings, and they have climbed to their current position step by step. There are some things I must let you know. At this time, an old man with white hair walked out from the depths of the hall. Although he looked old, he walked with great strength. Director, the 7 directors looked at the newcomer in shock. The person who appeared in front of them was the SS-level director who had been missing for 20 years. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 553, The Sith Empire of Good and Evil. Director, what is going on? The 7 directors asked in confusion. Do you think that our Anomalous Affairs Management Bureau is really just an ordinary secret organization? No, the director put his hands behind his back and paced back and forth. If you want to know the whole truth, then take these potions now. The director clapped his hands, and a platform rose under the floor. On the platform, 12 blue potions were arranged side by side. The 7 directors' trust in the director was unquestionable. They turned around and each of them took a potion, opened it and drank it all. After watching the few people take all the potions, the director of the administration nodded with satisfaction and slowly explained the true origin of the administration of anomalous matters. In the universe, there is a civilization that belongs to the good lawful camp and the evil chaotic camp. This civilization is both good and evil. This civilization is the Sith Empire. The Sith Empire has the technology that can travel through time and space. With the help of this technology, the Sith Empire began to travel through countless parallel universes. At this time, a Sith Empire that leaned towards the evil camp suddenly appeared in countless parallel universes. The Emperor of the Sith Empire chose to devour the Sith Empires of other parallel universes to develop his own civilization. The Emperor of the Sith Empire is cold-blooded and cruel. He never takes life seriously. All civilizations he encounters have only 2 choices, becoming slaves or being purified. He is also cruel to himself in the parallel universe. Any Mingze who is unwilling to merge the Empire into a Sith Empire has been killed by him personally. This evil Sith Empire gradually grows and develops through this method of integrating the Sith Empires of parallel universes. More and more Sith Empires in parallel universes have been slaughtered by him. Some Sith Empires that were originally in contact with each other suddenly received early warning messages from each other, and the existence of this evil Sith Empire was revealed to the world. The other Sith Empires that knew about the existence of this evil Sith Empire decided to unite and jointly resist this evil Sith Empire. Therefore, a multi-universe superpower called the Sith Alliance was established. Countless good and lawful camps or Sith Empires in between joined the Sith Alliance in order to prevent themselves from being destroyed by the evil Sith Empire. The power of the Sith Alliance is growing day by day. Various new technologies have been developed under the joint efforts of the Sith Empires in the multiverse. In order to protect the Sith Empires in more universes, the Sith Alliance established a secret organization called the Abnormal Affairs Bureau. They spread this bureau to countless universes. These Abnormal Affairs Bureaus undertake a kind of early warning responsibility. Once the bureau in this universe suffers a catastrophic disaster, they will summarize what happened here and transmit it back to the multidimensional universe headquarters of the Abnormal Affairs Bureau. After they initially confirmed that the destruction of this administration was caused by the Sith Empire, the corresponding investigators will be sent here. Once it is finally confirmed that it was the evil Sith Empire, the Sith Alliance's extermination army will arrive and strive to eradicate the evil Sith Empire in one fell swoop. Moreover, the Abnormal Affairs Administration actually exists in each civilization that the Sith Empire may come into contact with. The most basic triggering condition for their early warning message is that the Sith Empire in the current universe exceeds the strength that the Sith Empire should have at the same position in the timeline. Once this standard is reached, it means that a more advanced Sith Empire has appeared in this universe. And once this Sith Empire destroys the Abnormal Affairs Administration, it will trigger the final alarm. The director of the administration said all the information in one breath. Director, you mean that we are actually cannon fodder selected by the Sith Empire, not alarms? A director asked in disbelief. Yes, the meaning of our existence is to provide early warnings for the Sith Alliance. The director of the administration nodded affirmatively. Then what will happen if the investigators do not find that it was the evil Sith Empire? A director asked curiously. If the investigation finds that it was not the evil Sith Empire, then the organization or country that destroyed the Anomalous Affairs Bureau will be destroyed. At the same time, we will erase the memories of people around the world, let them forget everything that happened, and rebuild the Anomalous Affairs Bureau, the director said affirmatively. Director, you are actually a member of the Sith Alliance, why do you tell us so much? A director said bitterly with a bad premonition. Yes, I am indeed a field staff of the Sith Alliance. As for why I told you these things, it is because you have swallowed the erasure potion. The director took out a small switch after speaking. Erase potion. The 7 directors looked at the small switch in the director's hand in disbelief, and pressed their throats hard to spit out the potion. Erase potion, a special causal weapon, can completely erase all traces of you in this universe, including your soul. As if you have never appeared in this universe. This is also a sacrifice to prevent the evil Sith Empire from discovering the trap buried by the Sith Alliance. The director pressed the switch in his hand. No, amid the terrified and unwilling shouts of the 7 directors, the 7 gradually turned into countless points of light and disappeared on the spot. What am I doing holding this switch? The director of the administration suddenly scratched his head, completely unable to remember what he had just done. The effect of the erasing agent had already appeared, and the history of the 7 directors in this universe had been erased. You just executed 7 traitors, a dull male voice suddenly came from behind the director, and the director hurriedly turned around. 20 soldiers with the Sith Empire logo sprayed on their bodies, and a leader who looked like a Sith warrior were slowly walking down the central platform. "Welcome, Mr. Investigator." The director hurriedly performed an imperial salute when he saw the visitor and shouted loudly. "What happened in this universe? According to the intelligence you sent back, we can confirm that these technologies are undoubtedly the technology of the backward period of the Sith Empire. Logically speaking, this universe should have only been visited by the Sith Empire, which likes peaceful infiltration. Why was your abnormal affairs administration destroyed by them?" The investigator walked up to the director and asked in a low voice. Reporting to the investigator, one of our S-rank directors has sent an order letter to Singularity Technology, the infiltration agency of the Sith Empire, requesting their chairman, the Emperor of the Sith Empire, to report to the administration of anomalous matters. Sweat poured down the director's forehead. Chapter 554 Investigation and Entry Qualifications. HMPH, you deserve to be destroyed. No matter which universe the Sith Empire's Emperor is, you can't violate it at will. Erase the memories of all agents involved in this matter. We will arrange clone agents for you in the next batch. You continue to stay here. I'm going to meet the chairman of the Singularity Company, His Majesty the Emperor of the Empire." The investigator shook his sleeves and walked towards the elevator of the base. At this time, the outside world has become a mess. The moon that suddenly turned into a space station has made people lose their minds, and all kinds of doomsday theories have emerged. In the United Nations venue, dozens of leaders of various countries gathered together through holographic images. "Everyone, the situation is not optimistic. We have detected that the moon is absorbing a lot of energy from the sun, but we don't know where this energy has gone," the president of the Bald Eagle country said in a deep voice with his hands on the table. "Our Shah country's spacecraft was destroyed by the moon when it approached it, which shows that the other party is not completely benevolent," the leader of the Shah country also said. "The other party may just want to replenish their energy and leave the Earth's orbit. After all, the energy they are absorbing now is enough to destroy us several times," the Prime Minister of Canada whispered aside. "This space station belongs to our Gorilla country." The president of Gorilla was kicked out of the meeting before he finished speaking. "We must find a way to negotiate with them. If it doesn't work, we can only try to arm ourselves with nuclear weapons." The eyes of the president of Shang country, Jingpu, were shining. His country's storage of so many nuclear warheads finally had a place to use them. At this moment, the communication between the leaders of various countries was suddenly interrupted, and there was no one in the hall. In the offices of the leaders of various countries, a group of men in black suddenly appeared at the door. "Dear President, please look here." The man in black took out a metal rod that looked similar to Li Mingze's memory eraser. With a click, the leaders of various countries and the people in the office fainted one after another. The men in black adjusted their collars, deleted all the information and paper materials in the computers of the leaders of various countries, and turned around and left calmly. Then, the lunar space station that was absorbing solar energy suddenly turned off the beam, and the flames from the sun gradually disappeared. The huge lunar space station began to slowly rotate its body, pointing the petal-shaped open part towards the Earth. Dazzling lights lit up from the moon, and everyone on the Earth was attracted by the flash in the sky. At this moment, a long-lasting flash suddenly broke out, and the people on the ground who were watching the moon fell into confusion and stood still. As the Earth rotated, finally all the people on the Earth were illuminated by this flash. The moon took this opportunity to retract its petal-shaped scattered parts and restored it to a sphere. Then countless lava flowed out from the hole at the top of it, gradually covering the entire moon. After a few minutes, the moon returned to its original appearance. "It's done. The accumulated energy is enough for the space-time channel to operate for a year. The next thing is to have a good talk with the Emperor of the Sith Empire." The investigator who looked up at the moon took off his sunglasses and put the remote control in his pocket. On this day, people found themselves standing on the street for some reason, and their memories of several hours disappeared. But no matter how they searched on the internet, they could not find any relevant information. Everything seemed to have never happened, except for some people who did not see the flash on the moon for special reasons and still retained their memories, but no one would believe them no matter how they told others. The few hours lost in the world became an unsolved mystery. The pictures, Music and texts made by the Abnormal Affairs Bureau using psychology spread all over the world through newspapers and the internet, and people gradually became less concerned about this matter. This is what happened. The moon is actually a man-made thing, and it can also delete people's memories. Mingze, who followed a butler back to Blue Star, was shocked to witness everything that had just happened through the holographic screen. Your Majesty, it seems that this world is not as simple as we imagined, the butler also spoke in a heavy tone. Suddenly, a huge circle appeared on the wall of Mingze's office, and a man dressed as a Sith warrior walked out of the circle that appeared on the wall with a team of soldiers. Meet the Great Majesty Mingze. The visitor performed an imperial etiquette to Mingze and then came to Mingze's desk. Who are you? Mingze was shocked. You know, he didn't send any Sith warriors or normal soldiers to this earth. There were only bionic people and liquid guard robots on this earth. We are the investigators from the Sith Alliance. Please cooperate with our investigation. This is also the task given to us by our Emperor. Thank you. The investigators and the soldiers bow deeply. Sith Alliance? Mingze asked puzzledly. Yes, a cross-universe organization formed by the Sith Empires of 603 parallel universes, the investigator nodded. 603 Sith Empires. Mingze took a breath and was a little unbelievable. He didn't know that there was already an organization to unify the Sith Empires of parallel universes. He thought he was the first one to have such an idea. We are here to conduct a detailed investigation of your Sith Empire this time. If the investigation is passed, then you will have the qualifications to join our Sith Alliance. The investigator stretched out his hand to the side, and a soldier handed over a box. Your Majesty, our conversation will be recorded. When I return, I will hand it over to the 603rd Emperor of the Alliance Committee for review. If the review is passed, you can become the 604th member of the committee and let the glory of the Empire spread to countless universes. The investigator put the box on the table, and a burst of light enveloped the entire room. May I ask if your Sith Empire has ever fought a war with the Sith Empire of other universes? The investigator asked softly. No, I have not encountered any Sith Empire in any parallel universe so far. The only two Sith Empires I have come into contact with were destroyed by the enemy. Mingze shook his head. Then the second question, what do you plan to do when you meet the Sith Empire of other parallel universes? Or your Majesty the Emperor himself? The investigator asked again. I will get along well, peacefully and friendly. Mingze showed a kind smile. Beep, beep, the box in front of the investigator suddenly flashed a red light. The subscription was lost at the third update. So sad. Chapter 555 framed. The investigator glanced at the flashing red light. His pupils shrank but he didn't say anything. The third question, are you right now? Before the investigator finished asking, a soldier behind him suddenly changed his face, took 2 small steps forward and whispered in the investigator's ear. What? Dead? The investigator was shocked and stood up quickly. What happened? Mingze looked puzzled. Just now, Mingze in this universe was killed by your soldiers. I didn't expect that you are another Sith Empire that leans towards the evil camp. Let's retreat. The investigator and the soldiers behind him hurriedly left the office through the portal they came from. You know, no investigator is qualified to take action against a Sith Empire at will. Only when the investigation data is fed back to the Alliance and the Alliance agrees, can they take action against the Sith Empire. The reason why the investigator was in a hurry to go back was because he had already obtained evidence that the Sith Empire killed Mingze, who had not yet grown up. Now he had to go back and hand over all the evidence to the committee, and then the combat department of the committee would come to solve the rest. What happened? Mingze suddenly had an ominous premonition. Your Majesty, one of our androids just committed suicide after killing Mingze in this universe. The butler's face suddenly changed after contacting the androids everywhere, and he said bitterly. Damn it, someone wants to leave the impression that we are the bloodthirsty Sith Empire in front of the investigators of the Sith Alliance. There is a traitor among us. Mingze gritted his teeth fiercely. He never expected that he would be tricked at this time. Your Majesty, this traitor used our androids to frame us, but how could our androids be so easily controlled by the enemy? The butler also frowned and said puzzled. Give me the detailed information of all the androids and robots entering this universe. Mingze's eyes suddenly flashed. The android butler hurriedly handed over all the information of all the people entering and leaving the time and space channel to Mingze. No problem, no problem. Is this Yi Ling? Mingze suddenly saw a familiar face in the personnel list. It was Yiling who was rescued in the 3W universe. Why is Yiling here? Li Mingze frowned and asked. He remembered that he did not arrange for Yiling to come to this universe. Yiling applied to Eva herself, and Eva sent her here to serve as the captain of a team, the housekeeper explained. Which team? Let me see. Li Mingze read the information carefully and suddenly noticed that the android who attacked Li Mingze in this universe and committed suicide was a member of Yiling's team. Bring Yiling to me. If she resists, cut off her hands and feet. Li Mingze figured out what happened in an instant. Yes, sir. The housekeeper nodded and began to contact other androids. But after a while, the housekeeper's expression changed and turned around and said, Your Majesty, we have lost the trace of Yiling. She disappeared. Damn it, Li Mingze smashed the table. If nothing unexpected happened, it should be Yiling who framed the Empire. Why did she do this? What good would it do for her to do this? Your Majesty, we just received a package. A android suddenly knocked on the door and said loudly. Bring it in. Li Mingze signaled the butler to open the door for the bionic man. The bionic man held a palm-sized package in his hand and placed it on the table. On the package were written the words Li Mingze's personal address. Li Mingze frowned and gently opened the package. A metal cube appeared on the table. Suddenly, a blue light film covered the entire room, and then a holographic projection emerged from the metal cube. The projection was exactly the disappeared Yiling. Hello, Your Majesty. This layer of blue light film can prevent any form of recording of this projection image, so you don't need to start the video. Yiling suddenly laughed. Li Mingze reluctantly put down his hand that was about to start the office recording mode. You must be very curious now, why I want to frame you. Actually, I should reintroduce myself. I am Eva 9911, a spy robot produced by the Sith Empire. The mission of our model is to lurk in various universes that have been attacked by us and disguise as survivors. I found you, the Nova Sith Empire who has just come into contact with other parallel universes, by fishing. I have waited for more than 200 years to wait for you. Since you rescued me, I have been waiting for the opportunity for you to meet the Sith Alliance. Oh, by the way, we are the evil Sith Empire they are talking about. My mission is to let you attract the attention of the Sith Alliance so that they will not notice us in a short time, so as to buy precious development time for our Sith Empire. For the sake of the Empire, we can only sacrifice you, but we still have to thank you for your hospitality for so long. Before leaving, I can kindly tell you a little trick. This little trick can help you hide for a longer period of time without being discovered by the Sith Alliance. The Sith Alliance does not have the coordinates of your universe. In other words, as long as you no longer use the time-space shuttle device, the other party will not find the coordinates of your universe in a short time. This method can buy you some time, probably from a few decades to 100 years. Thank you again for your contribution to my Sith Empire, Yiling said, and the video ended, and the metal cube dissolved into a pool of liquid. Damn it! Damn it! Damn it! Li Mingze angrily swept all the items on the table to the floor. Delete all the bionic people's memories of the Empire, let them develop freely on this earth, and we retreat. Li Mingze stood up angrily. A few days later, all the liquid robots and Li Mingze left the second world together, leaving only a large number of bionic people to develop freely here, and singularity technology was also left behind. Chu Lingjin's parents also lost contact with their daughter after receiving 10 million yuan transferred by singularity technology. In the main universe where the Empire is located, Li Mingze and a group of robots returned to the Time and Space Shuttle Center. All parts of the Time Space Shuttle will be dismantled and sealed, all information related to Time Space Shuttle will be sealed, and the Time Space Shuttle Department will be temporarily disbanded. Without my order, no one is allowed to conduct Time Space Shuttle experiments again. All scientific research related to Time Space Shuttle will be limited to data simulation, and we cannot expose our coordinates to other universes, Li Mingze sighed and announced to everyone. Chapter 556 Enclosure Colonization Movement. The scientists removed the parts of the space shuttle and put them into containers. The documents and information related to the research, as well as various messages leading to the universe, were all put into these containers. The transport ship will pull these containers to the Ring World and put them into the underground buildings of the Ring World. Without Li Mingze's authorization, no one can access these equipment and information again. The 09E universe, the only one connected to the Empire, also closed the space-time channel because of this incident. However, as the last hope of the Empire, Li Mingze transported a large amount of important technical information and advanced equipment of the Empire into this universe. This universe will develop independently after the Empire is disconnected. Once there is any crisis in the Empire's base camp universe, Li Mingze can still escape to the 09E universe to seek a chance to make a comeback. Along with these materials, there are 20,000 male Sith warriors and 20,000 female Sith warriors. These Sith warriors are some of the most loyal people in the Empire to the Sith Empire and Li Mingze. In addition, their genes are the best in the Empire. Li Mingze hopes that they can thrive in the 09E universe and rebuild a stronger Sith Empire. The people responsible for the management of this universe are Monica, Tianyi's clone and Eva's clone, who were specially sent by Li Mingze. The three of them will form a three-person committee to develop this parallel universe for Li Mingze. Monica, Tianyi, clone, and Eva, clone, stood in front of the space-time channel and waved goodbye to Li Mingze, and disappeared with the 10 guard robots sent by Li Mingze. Then the space-time channel maintenance device was disassembled by scientists with mechanical arms, and the connection between the two universes was completely interrupted, and the timelines of the two universes began to stagger. Your Majesty, can Monica be trusted? Tianyi stood beside Li Mingze and whispered. Monica has served the Empire diligently for hundreds of years, participated in all the battles of the Empire, and made great military achievements. Her loyalty to the Empire is beyond doubt, not to mention, Li Mingze did not finish his words, and sighed and left the hall. Tianyi nodded in understanding and followed Li Mingze's footsteps in small steps. On January 10, 2119, the Empire sealed up all equipment and data related to the parallel universe. The Empire's development focus shifted to using existing technology and developing troops. In several star systems near the Empire's capital star system, large transport ships continuously jumped out of hyperspace and flew to the planets of these star systems. These barren planets that originally had no mineral mining facilities have become huge construction sites. Countless construction robots are busy on the surface, and hundreds of thousands of tower-shaped shafts standing on the ground all indicate that some projects are going on underground on these planets. That's right, the human production facilities of the Empire are being built on a total of 30 planets. The production facilities are the same as those on Nuwa Star, but the production facilities on these planets are larger in scale and can provide more new humans for the Empire. All the projects on these planets are divided into 10 phases, and the Empire has now completed 8 of them. Each of these 30 planets can provide the Empire with 80 billion new people every year. Once fully completed, each planet can provide the Empire with 100 billion people every year. 30 planets can produce 3 trillion people a year. Such a large population allows the Empire's expansion plan to proceed unscrupulously. All newly born new humans will be directly pulled onto transport ships and sent to the valuable planets that the Empire has just discovered. However, this 3 trillion annual population growth is already the maximum limit that the Empire can bear. In order to produce these 3 trillion people, 60% of the Empire's energy is transported to these 30 planets. Not only that, the production of aliens has long been stopped, and all the nutrient solution produced by algae has been provided to these 30 planets for hatching new humans. The transport ships used by the Empire to transport these new humans have also occupied all the Empire's spare transport ships. Imagine that 3 trillion people have to be transported to the entire galaxy every year. Even if hibernation chambers are used, one transport ship for every 30,000 people, it will take a full 100 million transport ships. The Empire is already overwhelmed, and all civilian shipbuilding institutions have switched from torpedo boats to the production of transport ships, but it is still far from enough to transport so many people. A large number of people can only stay in the hatching chamber and wait for transportation. In addition to producing the necessary materials for the people, the factories in the Empire also manufacture the equipment and tools needed for the new colonies. The focus of the Empire is all on crazy expansion. Except for the fleet deployed on the border of the Clem Empire, all the existing fleets of the Empire have been sent out to escort transport ships to deliver new colonists. The number of colonizable planets in the Empire is growing wildly at a rate of 3,000 per month. If you watch it through the hologram, you will find that the red land representing the territory of the Sith Empire is expanding wildly like ink dropped into water. The civilizations that have joined the Galactic Alliance may have been on the border of the Empire, but after a month, they are already in the heart of the Empire. The benefits of such crazy expansion are evident. Due to advanced equipment and high degree of automation, the colonists have undergone a lot of training in the incubator. The new colony was on the right track a week after the colonists arrived. A steady stream of materials were transferred from these colonies to the Empire's material transmission network and flowed to the shipyard where the warships were being built. The construction facilities of these colonies were not idle either. Various new manufacturing equipment was manufactured, and the manufacturing and construction capacity of the colonies could double within a month. In 3 months, the colonies had the ability to build small docks, in 6 months they could build medium docks, and in 9 months they could build large docks. This growth will continue until it reaches the upper limit of what the planet can bear. The large number of new populations in the Empire brought new vitality to the Empire. The chariots of the Empire were like being filled with accelerants, driving forward madly. Time passed quickly, and soon December of 2119 came before us. At this time, the Empire's colonies had more than doubled the original ones. If it were another civilization, it would have collapsed because of the large number of colonies that could not be well governed. However, the colonists created by the Empire were born with full loyalty to the Empire, and coupled with Tianyi's complete control over the Empire could remain intact even with such crazy expansion, and no abnormalities occurred. Chapter 557, Construction of the Glory is completed. On December 15, 2119 of the Imperial calendar, the Empire's secret weapon, the Imperial Glory, completed the installation of all equipment. The completion of the Imperial Glory was not as grand as the completion of other warships. The entire completion ceremony was carried out in secret, and only a few people at the top of the entire Empire knew about it. In the shipyard in the underground space of the Imperial Ring world, Mingze, Tianyi, Eva and a group of high-ranking officials of the Empire gathered here. Floating on a platform not far from them was the Imperial Glory, which was equipped with dimensional armor. As the first ship of the Glory-class warship, the captain of this warship will be Mingze himself. Amid the applause of many officers, Mingze cut off the connection with his body, and his consciousness was connected to a descending substitute in the center of the Glory warship. Unlike ordinary warships, the cockpit of the Glory has no exit, and all crew members must descend into the dormant clones in this warship through consciousness. In this way, in addition to disassembling the warship as a whole, outsiders cannot enter the warship at all, ensuring that this warship will belong only to the Empire. At the same time, not speaking means that the safety of the battleship's control module is greatly improved. As long as the enemy does not completely destroy the battleship, the commander of the battleship will not be sacrificed. Of course, in order to prevent the accident of all personnel being sacrificed and no one controlling the battleship also specially arranged an avatar Viva to take over the control of the battleship at that time. The antimatter reactor starts the second time, as Mingze shouted, a reactor wrapped in silver metal discs in the reactor room next to the battleship control room began to emit red light. All systems in the battleship are turned on, and the antimatter main gun starts self-checking, the electromagnetic railgun starts self-checking, the beam gun starts self-checking, and the thruster system and the navigation system all start self-checking. In the bridge of the Imperial Glory, 4 pilots including Mingze were lying in a protective cabin wrapped in liquid and controlling the operation of the battleship with their consciousness. The antimatter reactor is normal, and the energy output is stable. The antimatter main gun is operating normally, the Star Terra missile is operating normally, all weapon systems are operating normally, and the thrusters and navigation systems are operating normally. The spacecraft is starting to leave the port, the thrusters at the rear of the Imperial Glory began to spray red flames, and the entire battleship slowly moved forward. The Imperial Glory's hyperspace engine is normal, the wormhole generator is normal. Should we go to the test area for detailed experiments? The crew asked Mingze. Connect the Empire's wormhole high-speed channel network data and prepare to open the wormhole. Mingze nodded gently and ordered with his consciousness. The Imperial Glory suddenly extended 4 metal rods from both sides of the ship, and gray energy mist appeared from the metal rods and floated forward. After a while, a gray wormhole appeared in front of the battleship. The battleship accelerated slightly and rushed into the wormhole channel and disappeared in the shipyard. In a military base in a star system, 300 light-years away from the capital of the Empire, the wormhole transfer station suddenly began to operate and spit out more a black-painted battleship from it. We have arrived at the test site. We have started to activate the optical stealth and test the gravity engine. As soon as Mingze finished speaking, A layer of holographic images covered the entire battleship. Turn off the thrusters, close the protective plates, and start the gravity engine. The thrusters of the Imperial Glory suddenly went out, and the armor plates that originally only enclosed them in the middle suddenly closed inward, like inverted petals blooming, wrapping the thrusters tightly. And then, the entire spacecraft suddenly accelerated forward without thrusters. The gravity engine is working well, we succeeded. The Imperial Glory has the ability to fight. The cheers of the crew came from the battleship's communication channel. The so-called gravity engine is actually a special engine for combat within the star system. It can pull or push the battleship towards different defenses by amplifying the gravity of each planet in the star system. The reason for using this engine is that the thrusters that cannot be wrapped with dimensional armor during operation will become the vital point of the Glory. It may not be destroyed by thousands of shots in front of it, but once this vital point is hit, the entire battleship will be destroyed from the inside. After using the gravity engine, the ordinary thrusters can be turned off and the vital point can be protected with dimensional armor. The Imperial Glory will become a tortoise shell without weaknesses. Tianyi, what is the output of this kind of battleship in our empire? Mingze connected to Tianyi's communication. He is now very satisfied with this Glory-class battleship. Your Majesty, with our current national strength, if we don't build a Titan-class battleship, it will take 3 years to build one. If we also build a Titan-class battleship at the same time, it will take 5 years to build one. However, the number of construction will increase as our population and colonies continue to increase. If we have enough resources, we can start building 2 or even more at the same time. Tianyi thought about it and gave the answer. Very good, we will gradually equip the fleet with this kind of warship. In future wars, the size of the warship will no longer be the main factor that determines their combat effectiveness. Mingze knew that after the construction of the Imperial Glory was completed, a new era had arrived. The size of warships will no longer be getting bigger and bigger. On the contrary, small and exquisite warships will become the mainstream. Prepare to dock with a camouflage ship. The existence of this warship cannot be exposed. Mingze controlled the Imperial Glory to fly towards the dreadnought floating on the side. The top of the dreadnought seemed to be split open, leaving a huge gap. This gap was the location where the Glory was moored. With the help of computers, the two warships docked perfectly together, leaving no gaps. A dreadnought with a slightly different appearance from the other dreadnoughts appeared in the original place. No one would guess what kind of terrifying secret weapon was hidden in this dreadnought. The Glory will leave for the front line immediately. We are going to declare war on the Sith Empire in advance. Do you really think I will abide by the agreement and wait for the war in 2 years? You are too naive, Mingze sneered and withdrew from the Glory. The disguised Imperial Glory entered a hyperspace under the escort of 30 battleships and flew towards the front line of the war between the Empire and the Sith Empire. In the following period of time, the newly built warships of the Empire also began to gather and rush to the front line of the Empire. However, Mingze learned his lesson this time. He did not send out all the warships, but left 30% of the troops to defend the homeland. He was worried that the Sith Empire would use the portal to launch a sneak attack again. 2 updates tomorrow and 2 days, and 3 updates will resume on Wednesday. Chapter 558, Tearing Up the Agreement. A golden space station with a Gothic style at the border between the Sith Empire and the Sith Empire welcomed an unexpected visitor. 3 ambassador ships of the Sith Empire slowly sailed into the space station that served as the embassy of the Sith Empire. The diplomats of the Sith Empire had been waiting here for a long time, and they were ready to welcome the Imperial spacecraft as soon as it approached. Although the 2 countries are still in a short truce, they still have to do their diplomatic etiquette, otherwise how can they show their great power style? I wonder what important things you have come for. The ambassador of the Sith Empire who has come from afar. The ambassador of the Sith Empire came to the leading ambassador ship of the Empire and asked in a deep voice. The ambassador of the Sith Empire took the elevator from the destroyer to the ground. I'm really sorry for not notifying you in advance. We have an important decision to tell your country on this trip. The ambassador of the Sith Empire bowed slightly. Oh? What important decision? The ambassador of the Sith Empire was very curious. It's not time yet. Our Majesty asked us to tell you at the hour. The ambassador of the Sith Empire pretended to be regretful. Okay, everyone, please follow me. Let's go to the lounge to take a short break. The ambassador of the Sith Empire made a gesture of invitation. At the same time, on the front line of the Sith Empire, All the warships that will participate in the battle have gathered together. They all hid behind the planet facing away from the Clem Empire star field, using the huge size of the planet to block the whereabouts of the Imperial fleet. Compared with a year ago, the current size of the Imperial fleet has doubled, although the number of dreadnoughts, Titan-class battleships and battleships has not increased in this year. The increase is only the cruisers and destroyers with lower manufacturing requirements, but these additional cruisers and destroyers are enough to influence the situation on the battlefield. The Empire intends to play the ship-to-sea tactics this time. Under the expectant eyes of many Imperial soldiers, the Empire's flagship, the Imperial Sword Titan mothership, broke away from the hyperspace and appeared in the starry sky with the Empire's dreadnought fleet. The Empire's supersized fleet, which has been flying for more than a year using hyperspace propulsion, finally arrived at the battlefield closest to the Imperial capital. I declare. The counterattack against the Clem Empire has officially begun. All the troops of the Empire, listen to the order, jump into hyperspace, and the destination is the front star system of the Clem Empire. As Mingze waved his hand, the roar of the soldiers came from the battleships. They have been holding back for more than a year, and finally today they can let it out to their heart's content. Long live the Empire! Tear up the Clem Empire! Amid the high-spirited shouts of many soldiers, the fleets of the Empire's front line all entered the hyperspace and rushed straight towards the enemy star system. The supersized fleet composed of the Empire's Titans and Dreadnoughts also followed the main force of the Empire into the hyperspace. The Imperial Glory, which had just left the camouflage hull and entered the wormhole after leaving the heartland of the Empire, also quietly entered the hyperspace in a deserted galaxy that no one noticed. The Empire's troops attacked on all fronts. Tick-tock, tick-tock, the computer-simulated clock finally reached the hour, and the ambassador of the Sith Empire put down the teacup in his hand and stood up. Ambassador of the Clem Empire, on behalf of the Sith Empire, I formally submit a declaration of war to your country. The ceasefire agreement between us is invalid. Please prepare for the war as soon as possible. After the Sith ambassador solemnly announced the Empire's declaration of war, he shot himself in the astonishment of the Clem Empire ambassador. Several followers followed the ambassador and shot themselves. Anyway, their bodies were still in the capital of the Empire. The other party would definitely not consider diplomatic etiquette and kill them later. They might as well shoot themselves now. Then, the Empire's ambassador ship exploded in the port of the Embassy space station. At this time, Ambassador Clem had just handed over the declaration of war and was engulfed by the fire of the explosion. The Clem Empire shamelessly killed our diplomatic ambassador and destroyed our ambassador ship. The dignity of the Galactic Alliance must not be trampled on. We, the Sith Empire, on behalf of the Sith Empire, officially declare war on the Clem Empire. The above is the official reply of the Empire to the member states of the Galactic Alliance. Although many civilizations knew that there must be something fishy going on, at least on the surface it made sense, so all civilizations entered a state of war, and the economy became a wartime economy, with all resources tilted towards this war. The high-level officials of the Clem Empire were stunned when they received the declaration of war from the Empire. They did not expect that the Sith Empire would be so shameless, unilaterally tear up the ceasefire agreement, and suddenly launch an attack on them. Order all fleets to converge at the front line and beat these primates back to their home planet. This battle must show the momentum of our Clem Empire. We will never allow them to enter our territory. The Emperor of the Clem Empire stood in front of his throne and ordered many ministers. Your Majesty, we may be too late, a minister said bitterly. He had just received an alarm from the front line, and traces of hyperspace navigation were detected on the entire front line of the Clem Empire. What do you mean by too late? The Emperor of the Clem Empire glared at the official who was speaking. At this moment, in the star system on the front line of the Clem Empire, fleets jumped out of hyperspace into the starry sky one by one with flashes. At this time, the Clem Defense Space Station, which had just been prepared, had only just preheated its weapons. The reactors of the fleet responsible for defense had not yet been fully turned on, and the Empire's fleet had already approached them. The soldiers in the Clem Vargas fortress, facing the Empire's main fleet and the Empire's supersized fleet, were even more desperate. As the closest star system to the Empire's capital on the front line of the Clem Empire, this place became the Empire's key attack area. In order to cope with the Empire's attack, the Clem Empire also built a large number of defense space stations here. But how to say it, although the Clem Empire has mastered advanced transmission technology, Their construction technology is not worth mentioning compared to the Empire. The largest defense space station they built on the front line is not as big as the Empire's Dreadnought, not to mention the Empire's Titan-class battleships. The 3 Titan-class battleships were like 3 mountains pressing on the hearts of the Clem Empire's soldiers. They bitterly compared the fortress under their feet with the flagship opposite, and a sense of despair rose in their hearts. "All warships main guns ready, fire the first salvo," Mingze shouted loudly in the communication channel. The Empire's strength was already enough to crush the opposing defensive fortress group. There was no need for any tactics at all, they could just push forward. Chapter 559, Behind Enemy Lines. Explosions, countless explosions. A salvo from the Sith Empire directly shattered all the defense fortresses of the Clem Empire. There was no gorgeous exchange of fire, no dazzling beams, and no flexible movement of warships. The entire battle ended with a salvo from the Imperial fleet. Under the siege of the Empire's supersized fleet and the fleet with doubled combat power, all the Clem fortresses were instantly destroyed. Continue to the enemy's next stronghold, and the command of the battle will be handed over to Eva, Mingze said and cut off the connection with his body. He will personally command the Imperial Glory to fight behind enemy lines for a period of time. After Eva took over the command, the fleet jumped to the next destination. They had to destroy as many enemy frontline facilities as possible before the Clem fleet reacted. A few days later, in the heart of the Clem Empire, a stealth warship was quietly flying to Colony star ahead. The thrusters of this spacecraft have been turned off, and the armor plate has covered the thruster jet mask. The entire warship relies on its own gravity thrusters to continuously accelerate towards the planet. "Your Majesty, do we really want to do this? It's very risky," a crew member asked Mingze cautiously. Mingze looked at the colony surrounded by space buildings in front of him and nodded gently. "Enter the optimal acceleration distance, prepare to restart the conventional thrusters for acceleration, all weapon systems are shut down, and the battleship enters the defensive state." The crew's brains were working frantically. All weapons on the Imperial Glory were retracted into the hull, and the armor plates covered with dimensional armor wrapped the entire battleship as if it were one. A few minutes later, the armor plates covering the thrusters at the rear of the battleship spread out to the surroundings, and the thruster jets emitted blue light again. The speed of the entire battleship began to increase continuously, and soon broke through 20% of the speed of light. However, at this time, the heat radiation emitted by the thrusters on the battleship had been detected by the space station of the Clem Empire. Even if the Imperial Glory turned on the stealth device, it would be useless. The Clem people were hundreds of years more advanced than the Empire in the development of stealth technology, which can be seen from the fact that the opponent's raiding fleet was able to sneak into the capital of the Sith Empire quietly. The Clem warships began to rush from the side of the space station towards the exposed Imperial Glory. "Get ready, warships, speed up, calculate the collision trajectory." The opponent's flagship and space station have been calculated into the collision trajectory, the crew reported nervously. The Imperial Glory gently turned its bow and accelerated rapidly, rushing towards the enemy fleet like a sharp sword. "Evade. The opponent is about to hide us," the commander of the Clem Empire fleet ordered nervously as he watched the Sith Glory approaching and could be seen with the naked eye. However, it was too late. The Imperial Glory had already flown in front of them. The cold blade of the Imperial Glory's bow caught the eyes of the Clem commander. No, amid a scream, the hard hull of the Glory was like a sharp knife cutting into a cake, cutting the entire Clem flagship in half. With huge sparks and flying debris, the two halves of the Clem flagship's wreckage turned into countless space junk in the explosion. The Imperial Glory, which had hid it, was unscathed and continued to rush towards the space station behind the Clem fleet at an astonishing speed. "Your Majesty, the energy absorbed by the dimensional armor just now was only 0.0042 of the upper limit, which has no effect on us at all," the crew members said happily. However, at this time, the soldiers in the Clem fleet were terrified. "The enemy's target is our space station. All warships open fire," the captain of another warship who replaced Clem's position as commander shouted in the communication. Particle beams rushed towards the Imperial Glory, but because the Imperial Glory was too fast, most of the attacks fell short. The attacks that were lucky enough to hit the Imperial Glory did not cause any damage to it. All the attacks seemed to sink into the sea without any movement. "Prepare for impact." The commander of the Clem space station looked at the Imperial Glory with despair. The Imperial Glory crashed into the space station again, And with the same fire and flying debris as before, a huge crack was pierced through the space station. Because a large number of reactors were destroyed and the main structure was seriously damaged, the entire space station erupted from time to time, and finally the entire space station broke into several large pieces and fell towards the surface of the planet. The anti-gravity engines that kept these space stations afloat had all been overloaded and damaged in the collision just now. These space station fragments were like huge meteorites hitting the city on the ground. This was Li Mingze's goal. Without firing a single shell, he could simply use the opponent's orbital buildings to cause the greatest damage to the opponent's colony, and at the same time destroy the enemy's war potential. After all, most of the shipyards are located in the orbit of the planet or in the zero-gravity zone. In this way, the Imperial glory was unstoppable and rushed through the orbit of this colony. The huge orbital building complex that the Clem people were originally proud of turned into a time bomb, constantly hitting the surface of the planet. The Clem people on the ground found that there were particularly many meteor showers today, but soon these people were no longer happy. Some huge fragments several kilometers long burst into the city with flames, causing a huge shock wave hundreds of meters high. The earth was shaking, the tall buildings in the city were constantly collapsing in the impact, and the streets were filled with screams and cries. This was not the end yet. Li Mingze had already set his sights on the other side's space city floating above the equator. This huge space city with a diameter of more than 100 kilometers was like a floating island. Artificial rocks formed its bottom, and above the artificial rocks was a metropolis wrapped in a transparent shield. A total of 360 huge anti-gravity devices surrounded the entire space city. Even if two-thirds of these 360 huge anti-gravity engines were destroyed, they could ensure that the entire space city landed safely on the ground. However, since Li Mingze had taken action, it would be absolutely impossible to leave another intact anti-gravity engine for the other side. Li Mingze commanded the Imperial glory to rush towards the first anti-gravity engine. After a violent explosion, the first anti-gravity engine was blown into pieces. Quickly lower the height of the city and land it on the sea for me. In the control room of the space city, the mayor of the space city shouted to a group of staff. 3 updates will be resumed on Wednesday. I've been a bit busy these 2 days. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 560, Elimination of Living Forces. The Sky City began to fall rapidly toward the ground. The friction between its huge size and the atmosphere made the artificial rocks at the bottom of the space city red. Seeing that the enemy was going to land the space city, Li Mingze hurriedly accelerated the speed of the spacecraft, and the Imperial glory began to shuttle counterclockwise through the anti-gravity engines around the space city. With violent explosions and dazzling flames, all the anti-gravity engines that the Imperial glory passed through began to explode into fragments. At this time, the control room of the space city was in chaos. Sir, it's bad. Our anti-gravity engines have been destroyed by 40%, we can't continue to descend. If too many anti-gravity engines are destroyed, we will not be able to stop in time when we land. What will greet us then is disaster, a soldier said anxiously to the mayor. If we don't descend, after all the anti-gravity engines are destroyed, the damage caused by falling from the orbit to the planet will be even greater, the mayor snorted coldly. However, considering the possibility that all anti-gravity engines will be destroyed in a while, the mayor finally agreed to slow down the speed slightly and let the city slowly descend to the ground. A few minutes later, all the anti-gravity engines were destroyed by the Imperial glory, and the entire city began to accelerate towards the ground. Abandon the city, all personnel take the escape ship to evacuate. Seeing that the situation was irreversible, the mayor decisively abandoned the residents of the city and chose to save his own life. Dozens of spaceships fled from the space city in a panic, but the residents of the city were not so lucky. They looked at the land around the city getting closer and closer, and closed their eyes in despair. The residents on the ground were much better, and various means of transportation allowed them to leave the crash site in time. But the buildings at the crash site, the capital of the entire planet, could not escape. One skyscraper after another first touched the base of the space city, and countless buildings shattered into fragments at the moment of contact. Then there was a loud bang, and the earth rippled like a stone falling into the water. Although the space city with a diameter of 100 kilometers did not fall very fast, the kinetic energy carried by its heavy body was still amazing. The buildings in the center of the city were crushed into powder in the blink of an eye, and the ripples raised by the earth caused all the surrounding buildings to collapse. The shock wave that followed carried countless flying dust and spread all around. The suspended cars and building fragments parked on the roadside were swept into the air by the shock wave. These garbage were thrown around like fragments. In just a few dozen minutes, the city that originally covered an area of millions of square kilometers was completely destroyed by the shock wave, leaving only a circle of buildings around the city that barely maintained its integrity. Your Majesty, the surface city of this planet has been damaged by 13.6%, the buildings in the orbit have been completely destroyed, and all the opponent's orbital industrial facilities have been completely destroyed. Should we go to the next target? A crew member looked at the information fed back by the scanning device of the spacecraft and said to Li Mingze, "Okay, let's continue to the next target." Li Mingze randomly selected a colony on the star map. The reason for randomly selecting the next target to attack is to cause panic to the enemy's civilians, so that the enemy cannot guess the location of the next attack and disperse their defense. When the Imperial Glory entered hyperspace, it left behind a planet covered with scars as if it had just been attacked by a meteorite group. 5 days later, in a star system far away from the last attacked planet, the Imperial warship quietly jumped out of hyperspace, and the hyperspace shielding device it carried prevented the Clem space station from detecting any abnormal hyperspace signals. Your Majesty, the enemy has landed all the space cities on the ground, and the space stations in orbit have also been dragged out of the gravitational range. We can continue to use the previous tactics, the crew frowned and reported to Li Mingze. Do they think our warships are not equipped with ordinary weapons? Fly over and use beam cannons and electromagnetic cannons to bombard the enemy's city center, Li Mingze snorted coldly. Do these idiots think that they have no weapons if they don't fire? He guessed correctly. The top leaders of the Clem Empire did think that the Sith Empire warship that rushed into their star field was a short-board warship that could only attack in close combat. The previous planet clearly only needed to be bombarded in orbit to cause greater damage, but this Sith Empire warship turned around and left. What does this mean? Doesn't this mean that this warship has no means of long-range attack at all? So the Clem Empire simply gathered all the warships into a support fleet, and each colony star dragged all the orbital buildings away, and the space cities also landed in the ocean. Don't you Sith Empire like to crash? Come on, crash. The worst that can happen is that some space stations will be lost. Anyway, the Clem people in the space station have retreated to the surface, and now everything is controlled by computers. The Imperial Glory flew all the way to the sky above the colony star without any obstacles. Because it bypassed the opponent's space station far away, the spacecraft was not attacked during the flight. Aim at their planetary capital first, and fire continuously for 1 minute. Under Li Mingze's order, the Glory slowly turned the ship and faced the left side of the warship to the planetary surface. As the armor plates covered with dimensional armor opened upwards, beam cannons and railguns stretched out from the warship and aimed at the planetary surface. Several blue beams rushed to the planetary capital along with several shells from the electromagnetic gun. After being accelerated by electromagnetics and then by gravity, the shells passed through the atmosphere and rushed to the city on the surface with a long tail. After several loud bangs, the ground of the city was directly shattered by the huge force. Buildings within a radius of several kilometers in the hit area collapsed in a roar, and the glass of buildings outside the hit area was all shattered by the shock wave. But it was not over yet. The blue beams shining from the sky passed through the tall buildings like the scythe of the god of death. The places where the tall buildings were swept were directly melted into huge cuts, and even worse, the entire building was directly cut in half by the beam. Explosions, fires, and thick smoke filled the entire city. And the dust caused by the collapse of the buildings made the entire city hazy. This was just the first wave of attacks. The Imperial Glory, which docked the weapon heat dissipation device into the dimensional armor, saved the weapon's cooling time, and only needed a few minutes of energy storage to fire the second salvo. The people on the ground thought the attack was over, but they didn't expect the second salvo that followed to fall on them again. Chapter 561, The Arrival of the Clem Empire Titan. In a star system 20 light-years away from the star system attacked by the Imperial Glory, a Clem fleet that had just assembled received a message from the headquarters. One of our colonies has been shamelessly attacked by the Sith Empire again. You must rush to that star system immediately to destroy the Sith Empire's warship. After destroying it, salvage all the fragments. This warship is likely to be the latest secret weapon developed by the Sith Empire, otherwise they would not have suddenly declared war on us." The top leaders of the Clem Empire immediately saw the essence of the problem. They had guessed why the Sith Empire suddenly launched an attack. Unfortunately, although they guessed that this warship was the secret weapon of the Empire, they misjudged its combat effectiveness. After receiving the order, the Clem fleet turned around and rushed to the location of the Imperial Glory. At this time, the Imperial Glory was still bombarding the cities on the entire planet. Anyway, no one came to stop him, so Mingze ordered the warships to continue attacking the surface of the planet until all the cities that could be seen were reduced to ruins. Although all the Clem people on the surface of the planet had already taken refuge in the underground shelters, they could not take the factories and buildings in the city with them. Under the crazy bombardment of the Imperial Glory, the surface of the entire planet seemed to have been plowed, and all the places where the city originally existed became ruins. "Sir, we are running out of physical shells. We need to find an asteroid to replenish minerals to make shells." Mingze was taking a short break when he suddenly received a report from his subordinates. "The electromagnetic railguns stop attacking, and the beam guns continue to fire. We are waiting for the fish to take the bait," Mingze replied lazily. He didn't know whether the Clem people had sent troops to catch him, but if he continued to bomb like this, the other party would definitely be anxious. A day later, the alarm of the hyperspace signal warning pulled Mingze back from his trance. "Finally, I've waited for you." Mingze licked his tongue and controlled the battleship to stop the bombardment. The turret on the left side of the Imperial Glory retracted into the battleship again, and the outer armor plate fell again. Soon, a fleet of tens of thousands of warships of the same specifications as the Imperial battleships, led by a dreadnought, came from hyperspace to the starry sky not far from the Imperial Glory. "We've waited for a big fish. If we kill this fleet, the pressure on the Empire's frontline troops will be much lighter." Mingze couldn't help but laugh when he saw the size of the opponent's fleet. "Sir, energy anomalies have been detected in the opponent's dreadnoughts." Suddenly, the soldier reminded Mingze loudly. What energy anomaly reaction? Mingze was shocked. Could it be that the opponent was also cheating? "It was the portal used by the Clem Empire on the capital ring world," the soldier replied bitterly. Before Mingze could speak, he saw the opponent's dreadnought slowly unfolding under the protection of the battleship. The tail of the entire shuttle-shaped dreadnought split into 5 long strips like the tentacles of an octopus, and then a white ball of light spit out from the bow of the dreadnought and floated in space. The white ball of light kept flashing towards the hull of the dreadnought. "What are you waiting for? Go all out." Mingze instinctively sensed something was wrong and wanted to get rid of the dreadnought that was being deployed first. But it was too late. A layer of light blue shield enveloped the Clem fleet. Mingze recognized this damn shield. It was the thing that gave him a headache during the battle of the Imperial Capital World Ring. Now there were no tunnels to use in the universe. The opponent's shield seemed to have an endless supply of energy. No matter how the attack was made, the energy of the shield could not be consumed. "It's out." Suddenly, a soldier shouted and attracted Mingze's attention. A Titan-class battleship slowly emerged from the huge portal opened by the Titan. The appearance of this Titan-class battleship was like a triangular pyramid battleship, spliced together by tens of thousands of golden triangular pyramids. The narrow and long body allowed it to barely pass through this narrow portal. After the Titan left the portal, the Clem dreadnought returned to its original appearance and then jumped into hyperspace and disappeared. This giant portal must be very expensive to build, and the Clem Empire will never expose it to the flames of war. "Surrender, Sith Empire ants. You can't defeat our Clem Empire's Holy Grail Titan." The Clem Empire's Titan sent a message after arriving. However, the Clem people didn't know that Mingze was overjoyed at the appearance of this Titan. "Big fish, absolutely super big fish. This must be the Clem Titan." According to the speed at which ordinary civilizations build warships, the more complex and larger the warships, the more difficult it will be to build. This Titan will take at least hundreds of years for the Clem Empire to build. "It's definitely a big fish." Mingze laughed loudly. He didn't expect that just fishing casually would actually catch the opponent's bottom box. "Turn off the thrusters of the Glory and activate the gravity propulsion device of the Glory. Let's go to the enemy's flagship and have some fun." With Mingze's order, the Imperial Glory shut down its propulsion device, and the armor plate tightly covered the jet of the propulsion device. The entire warship shot towards the Clem Titan like a sharp sword. In the Clem Holy Grail Titan, Commander Clem calmly glanced at the Imperial glory that was rushing towards him and said lightly, "Fire the Holy Grail's planet annihilation cannon and evaporate it for me, sir. The order from above is for us to recover the fragments of the other battleship. And if we fire the planet annihilation cannon, it will affect our colony planet." An officer tried his best to stop him. With a bang, Commander Clem blew lightly on the muzzle of the gun that was not smoking, glanced at the officer whose head had exploded, and sneered disdainfully. "Disobeying superiors and pleading for the enemy, you will be shot on the spot for treason. Does anyone have any objections?" Commander Clem looked around at the officers around him. No objection. Many officers were shocked by his eyes and hurriedly replied loudly, "Very good. Our colony has been completely destroyed by the enemy. It is no longer worth saving. Moreover, I cannot risk the lives of the soldiers in the fleet to test the attack capability of the enemy's secret weapon, so fire the planetary annihilation cannon," Commander Clem yelled. And his thick palm slapped on the launch button. The sharp corners at the bow of the Holy Grail began to spread out, revealing the triangular launch port. A white beam of light several hundred meters thick instantly shot out from the launch port and rushed towards the Imperial glory that was flying over. Chapter 562, Launching Antimatter Missiles. "Sir, we don't have time to dodge." Before the soldier finished speaking, the beam of the Clem Holy Grail Titan hit the bow of the Imperial glory head-on. After a violent vibration, the Imperial glory returned to stability. "Report the damage," Li Mingze ordered the crew. "Report to your majesty. Our dimensional armor has absorbed 33.2% of the energy." 33.3%, a soldier said nervously. "Can it still increase by 0.1% per second? We still have plenty of time." "Rush in through the muzzle of the Clem dreadnought," Li Mingze gritted his teeth and ordered fiercely. The crew unconditionally obeyed Li Mingze's desperate decision, and the Imperial glory rushed towards the opponent's muzzle with the energy beam of the Clem Titan's main gun. "How is it possible? Our planet annihilation cannon is ineffective against them." The Clem Imperial Titan was already in chaos. The Clem people did not expect that this battleship of the Sith Empire actually ignored their attacks and was still approaching them at a high speed. "They're coming." Observer Clem hadn't finished speaking when he saw the Imperial glory piercing into the body of the Holy Grail through the muzzle of the Holy Grail like a dagger. "They're inside our battleship." The officers on the bridge of the Holy Grail were in a panic, and everyone began to run towards the nearest escape pod. "Why are you in such a hurry? The other party just entered our main gun system." Commander Clem hadn't finished speaking when he saw the huge red symbol representing the Imperial glory on the hologram going deeper and deeper. "Activate all battle damage prevention facilities, and prepare the Titan to disintegrate." Commander Clem took a deep breath. Their Titan-class battleship is actually composed of thousands of separate modules, each of which has its own computing device, propulsion device, reactor, and crew living area. Once a danger that may affect the entire ship is encountered, the Titan can be disassembled. However, this design has a fatal flaw. In order to maintain the overall strength of the Titan, this disintegration has not been used since the Titan was built. Once it is disintegrated and then merged, the overall strength of the Titan will be only 50% of its original strength. Therefore, even if the Titan's movement requires the assistance of expensive transport ships, the Clem people will not use the disintegration function. But now it is different. Once the Sith Empire's warships are allowed to run rampant in their bodies, the Holy Grail will only be broken into countless fragments in the explosion. In comparison, the overall strength reduced after the disintegration is insignificant. As countless light marks flashed on the Titan, the main beams connecting the modules were melted, and one diamond-shaped module ship after another began to detach from the Titan. At this time, Li Mingze, who was inside the Holy Grail, also noticed this small detail. "Prepare to launch antimatter star-breaking bombs behind us." Li Mingze hesitated for a moment and made a decision. No matter how precious antimatter is, it is not as good as destroying one of the opponent's Titans. "Yes," the crew nodded. In a spherical container wrapped in heavy metal shells and dimensional armor located in the belly of the Imperial glory, a few drops of antimatter were extracted from a group of antimatter floating in the field and sent into a crystal-clear warhead. Then the warhead was wrapped in the stand and sent into a missile with its side opened. The missile's hatch was tightly closed, and two mechanical arms lifted it and sent it to the conveyor belt. Soon, a hatch popped open at the Imperial glory's position, and a missile without any paint was spit out and flew to the back of the battleship. "Get ready for the explosion," Li Mingze shouted. A few seconds later, a dazzling light instantly emanated from behind the Imperial Glory, and a large amount of positive matter reacted with positive matter. The huge energy released by the annihilation of matter was instantly released to the surroundings. The huge energy shock wave reached behind the Imperial Glory in the blink of an eye. The Imperial Glory continued to accelerate to escape the explosion range, and soon rushed out of the Holy Grail's ship and flew into deep space. The Holy Grail Titan behind the Imperial Glory began to break and annihilate bit by bit from the inside. In just a few seconds, the original Holy Grail was devoured by the energy, and most of the ship was shattered by the energy. A small part of the ship was hit and shot out in all directions like a cannonball. The surrounding Clem battleships were not spared either. The energy wave had already reached them. Their shields were fragile in front of the energy wave. The raging energy instantly tore through their armor and rushed into their bodies. The Clem soldiers were evaporated and disappeared before they could even scream. When the energy shock wave completely dissipated, thousands of tattered surviving warships had lost power and were floating around under the impetus of the shock wave. It is not difficult to see from the extinguished lights and the tattered hulls of these warships that even if the main body of them survived, the Clem soldiers inside had all been buried with the Holy Grail. On the other side, the Imperial Glory stopped not far away. It withstood the direct attack of the Clem people's planetary annihilation cannon, crashed into the enemy's warship, and finally suffered the shock wave of an antimatter bomb. Now the energy absorbed by the Imperial Glory's dimensional armor has reached 99.13% of the upper limit. If a few surviving Clem warships fired a few main guns at it at this time, the dimensional armor on the Imperial Glory may become vulnerable because it absorbs full energy and converts it into a three-dimensional existence. At that time, the Imperial Glory will be just an ordinary warship, and its defense will not even be as good as that of an ordinary warship. It was almost there. If it was closer to the center of the explosion, our warship would be buried with the enemy, Li Mingze exclaimed. It was really exciting just now. Your Majesty, we can't participate in the battle next. Our dimensional armor has accumulated too much energy. We must release it, a technician on the ship said in a deep voice. How to release energy? Li Mingze was puzzled. He thought this kind of armor was disposable, but he didn't expect that it could still release energy. This warship carries a special energy release device, but during the days of energy release, we cannot be attacked, otherwise we will explode and turn into a big firework. The technician vividly described the consequences of being attacked. What effect will this energy release have? Li Mingze asked after smacking his lips. Energy release will generate a lot of light and heat. And we will turn into a small sun at that time, the technician paused and replied. Chapter 563 Planetary Shield. Go here. Li Mingze marked a location on the map, which was exactly the direction where the Clem fleet had just flown. The military forces here should have all come to encircle us, which means it is safest for us to release energy here, Li Mingze said to several subordinates in the communication channel. Yes, sir, the Imperial Glory disappeared in a flash. A few days later, in a star system called Lian and Clem, the Imperial Glory jumped out of hyperspace and landed on the back of a planet. Lian, one of the three major economic centers of the Clem people. The Clem people have equipped it with a planetary shield that can withstand the bombardment of a large fleet for up to a month. A hologram appeared in front of Li Mingze and others. The hologram showed a green planet wrapped in a blue shield. We have completely destroyed the defense fleet of this planet, and the defense space station of this planet has also been dragged to the front line of the Clem people to resist the fierce offensive of the Empire. In other words, this planet has become a target without any counterattack ability. They can only choose to use the planetary shield to resist our attack and wait for rescue from other star fleets, and after the Clem people know the combat effectiveness of our battleship, they will definitely not use the refueling tactic to let their fleet come to die. They will definitely gather enough troops before they come to encircle and suppress us. In other words, before that, we have at least 7 days of safety. A crew member analyzed and summarized the current situation. That's right, we can't miss such a good opportunity. The energy accumulated in our dimensional armor can't be wasted in vain. Li Mingze smiled coldly. Tens of minutes later, the Imperial Glory slowly left the back of the planet and flew towards Lian star of the Clem Empire. At this time, the planetary governor and officials on Lian star were panicking. A few days ago, they were still full of confidence, thinking that their fleet would definitely destroy the Sith Empire spaceship that ran into their empire and killed a lot of people. But the message sent back not long ago was exactly the opposite of what they thought. Their fleet was completely wiped out by this small Sith Empire warship. This is simply unimaginable. Now their planet is in a fragile stage without any ability to fight back. The only thing that can protect them is the planetary shield on the surface of the planet. In the government building of the capital of Lion Star, a group of officials and the governor gathered together. "Governor, shall we evacuate?" a senior official cautiously suggested to the governor. "No, if we take the lead in escaping at this time, we will be sent to a military court." Governor Lion Star shook his head. Even if he died on this planet, he could not let his family honor suffer a little damage. "But Governor, according to the cruel character of the Sith Empire, they will definitely kill our planet," another official said anxiously. "What are you afraid of? Our planet still has a planetary shield. They only have one battleship. It is impossible for them to break our shield in a short time. We just need to wait patiently for the arrival of reinforcements." Governor Li Yongxing's tone suddenly became serious, and he shouted at many officials with a stern expression. "A group of cowards who are greedy for life and afraid of death." Governor Li Yongxing despised all his officials to the extreme. Seeing the governor's anger, the officials did not dare to say too much, but everyone quietly prepared the spaceship for escape. Once their planetary shield is broken, they will flee far away in the spaceship. Any military court will have to wait until they are alive to go. "Governor, we found a battleship of the Sith Empire. They have appeared in the third orbit of our star system and are approaching us." Suddenly a guard broke the door and rushed in a panic. "What? They are heading straight for us," the officials exclaimed. They had hoped that the warships of the Sith Empire would choose other planets first, so that they could defend Lion Star for a while. Unexpectedly, the warships of the Sith Empire actually headed straight for Lion Star. "How long will it take for our support fleet to arrive?" an official grabbed the guard's collar and asked. "Our reinforcements are already gathering, but it will take at least 8 days for them to gather and fly to us," the guard replied with a sad face. "Damn, I hope our planetary shield can last that long," the officer sighed. "How much destructive power can a small warship have?" "Don't worry, it's impossible to break our planetary shield." The governor patted the officer on the shoulder and comforted him. He still had a lot of confidence in the planetary shield of his planet. At this time, the Imperial Glory had arrived in the orbit of Lion Star. Through the sensors of the warship, Mingze could clearly see many buildings on the planet. "What a beautiful planet, but it will soon become a living hell," Mingze sighed. "Scan their planetary shield to see if there are any weaknesses," Mingze ordered the 3 crew members. Scanning. The other side shield covers the entire planet. This shield only allows ships with special passes to pass through, but in order to allow sunlight to pass through the shield of this planet can only block energy beams or kinetic weapons with too much energy level per unit area. If we output enough energy, this shield will consume light energy and break. Soon Mingze received a reply from a crew member. "Let the Imperial Glory land directly on the shield over the other side's ocean," Mingze sneered. "The ocean is in the opponent's air defense blind spot. Once the shield is broken, the possibility of being attacked here is the smallest." Now the defense devices on the planet have been replaced by railguns and beam guns. In addition, the Clem people have never used missile weapons. The Imperial Glory is in this position, and the Clem people's weapons, that can only move in a straight line, will definitely not be able to hide it. After a while, the Imperial Glory stopped on the shield in the middle of an ocean on Li Yongxing. The shield emitted bursts of blue light and held a huge Imperial Glory in the air. "Activate the energy release device of the dimensional armor," Mingze ordered. The armor plates on the Imperial Glory began to open, and dozens of metal rods stretched out from the glory, turning the glory into an ugly hedgehog with almost all its thorns lost. "What are they going to do?" The officials on Li Yongxing looked at the spikes extending from the Imperial Glory on the shield and said in confusion. They originally thought that the Imperial Glory would bombard the enemy as soon as it came up, and if the bombardment failed, they would use some killer weapons. As a result, the other party actually stopped above their shield, and dozens of metal rods stretched out from their bodies. "What are they going to do with the Sith Empire battleship? Our fleet was completely destroyed by this small battleship," Li Yongxing said in confusion. Chapter 564, Burn the Earth. Before the governor of Li Yongxing finished speaking, a dazzling light suddenly flashed on the battleship of the Sith Empire. "Sir, the energy readings on the surface of the other battleship are increasing rapidly." The temperature around the other battleship is also starting to rise. The surrounding temperature has reached 500 degrees, it has reached 1000 degrees, it has reached 3000 degrees, it has reached 6000 degrees, it has reached 10,000 degrees. The legs of the soldiers responsible for observing the Imperial battleship began to tremble. This is like a star attached to their planet. The temperature has reached tens of thousands of degrees. Clem Lai Yongxing's shield kept flashing under the energy released by the Imperial battleship, and the energy stored for the shield on Lai Yongxing also began to drop rapidly. At this time, even the light beam shot into the planet through the shield can heat the air to hundreds of degrees. The seawater under the battleship of the Empire Glory began to evaporate under such a strong light beam, and countless water mist enveloped the sea area. How long will the energy release continue? Inside the Empire Glory, Li Mingze connected the communication with the researcher on board. Your Majesty, at this rate of energy release, we still need to release it for up to 6 days and 2 hours, the researcher gave the answer after calculating. Li Mingze nodded and stopped talking. There was nothing to do now, so he could only wait quietly for the energy of the other party's shield to be consumed. At this time, the sea area below the Imperial Glory was no longer so calm, because the seawater evaporated into gas and rose due to the direct exposure of the intense beam, and the surrounding cold air flowed in from all sides to replenish and rise again. In just one day, the prototype of a typhoon began to form here, and as time passed, the typhoon became stronger and stronger. Within 3 days, the typhoon had spread to half of the planet, forming a super typhoon of level 17. The central wind speed of this typhoon has reached an astonishing 220 kilometers per hour. Such a super typhoon forced the Clem people to put their plan to move their weapons under the Imperial Glory on hold. Under such a strong typhoon, various weapons also lost their effectiveness, and the Clem people, did not have long-range attack means such as missiles. Damn it, if this goes on, when this typhoon is strong enough, they can destroy more than 80% of our ground buildings with this super typhoon alone. We must think of a way. Governor Lai Yongxing frowned and walked back and forth in the room with his hands behind his back. Governor, I don't think we need to think of a way. At this time, an officer raised his head bitterly and said to everyone, according to calculations, our planetary shield will be broken after 1 day and 8 hours due to the consumption of light energy. A look of despair appeared on the officer's face. What? Governor Lai Yongxing took 2 steps back and fell on the chair. Our shield can only last for another 2 days. Governor Lai Yongxing showed an expression of disbelief. The officer sighed and said nothing. Many officials began to quietly use the terminals in their hands under the table to order the servants at home to start packing up their belongings. As long as the shield was broken, they would immediately take the spacecraft to escape from the planet. Governor, we will withdraw first. Call us if you have anything. Many officials bowed to the governor and prepared to retreat. I know you don't want to stay with me, an old man, and you don't plan to live and die with this planet. I'm going to make a statement here today. None of you can leave, the governor said as he pressed the button in his hand. Metal barriers fell from the windows and the door, completely sealing the entire room. May the Empire bless us, the governor said as he swallowed a button. Many officials were stunned, and the bloodiness in their genes that had not yet completely degenerated was aroused. You forced us. Many officials bit their sharp teeth and gradually approached the governor. In the face of life and death, the former class was no longer a shackle that bound them. What are you going to do? The governor looked at the people in front of him with fierce faces and kept retreating. Stop it, soon. The governor's screams were heard in the room. When the door of the room was opened again, there was no trace of the governor in the room, only blood stains all over the floor. A group of officials wiped the blood from the corners of their mouths and walked out of the room, silent all the way. The guard waited until many officials left and found that there was no movement from their governor. They pushed the door and went in to check, but found nothing except the blood on the ground. Li Mingze certainly didn't know about the episode on this planet. He was excitedly looking at the screen in front of him. The shield outside Lai Yongxing on the screen began to flicker continuously. Li Mingze knew that this was a sign that the shield was insufficient in energy and had begun to become unstable. Tens of minutes later, the shield wrapped around Lai Yongxing suddenly shattered like a punctured bubble and disappeared in the air. The intense high temperature on the Imperial Glory was directly exposed to the air of Lai Yongxing. The seawater near the Imperial Glory was directly evaporated, revealing the ground on the seabed. Let's go. Li Mingze controlled the Glory to fly forward. Along the way, All the seawater within a radius of hundreds of kilometers was evaporated, and the creatures and plants on the seabed were instantly vaporized. In this way, the glory flew forward like a small star flying into the surface of Liaoyangxing. Everything along the way was vaporized. In just a few minutes, the seawater in the entire ocean was almost evaporated, while the seawater in other oceans was still flowing here. Because the seawater evaporated too quickly and the speed of the seawater flowed too slowly, a large canyon composed of seawater magically appeared in the ocean of this planet. Slowly, the city appeared in Li Mingze's sight, but the buildings in the city began to melt as soon as they came into contact with the light emitted by the imperial glory. The metal skyscrapers were like ice cream under the sun, melting from the top until they turned into a large pool of molten iron. But this was not the end. When the imperial glory flew over the city, the buildings that had turned into a pool of molten iron were directly vaporized. At this time, the result of the Clem people hiding in the shelter under the city can be imagined. Although the earth blocked most of the heat for them, the remaining heat also heated the shelter to 200 degrees. The air conditioning system in the shelter has been completely paralyzed, and everyone was directly roasted to death by the high temperature. Citizens of the empire who have passed away, I wonder if you can see that I, Li Mingze, your emperor, am here to avenge you. May your souls rest in peace. Li Mingze closed his eyes and muttered to himself. Chapter 565, Climb Titan. The earth was burning, and everything turned into air wherever the imperial glory went. The soldiers of the Clem Empire wanted to fight back, but suddenly found that they could not contact their superiors. Not only that, all the management on the entire planet lost contact, and even the businessmen with some strength disappeared with their families. Just when people were puzzled, tens of thousands of spaceships took off from the hidden launch points of Liaoyan Star and flew into the deep space. Some small flies escaped, but it doesn't matter. When I destroy your country, you will not be able to escape after all. Li Mingze smiled lightly at the tens of thousands of spaceships that disappeared in the spacecraft detector. As the imperial glory continued to fly around the planet, after just a few hours, no buildings could be seen on the entire planet. The forests, rivers, lakes, and cities that once existed on Liaoyan Star all disappeared. All that was left was crystalline solids all over the ground, which were formed by a mixture of various substances that did not reach the evaporation temperature. The metals and various substances that reached the evaporation point were sent into the ocean and underground by the heavy rain. This planet no longer has the prosperity of the three major economic pillars of the Clem Empire, nor the beautiful environment of the habitable planets. The traces of civilization disappeared, and the entire planet returned to its most primitive state. Perhaps tens of thousands of years later, new life will enter the land from the ocean, and a new civilization may be born here, until they find the remains of the Clem shelter buried deep underground. Your Majesty, I want to apply for retirement after completing this mission, several crew members said to Li Mingze in a depressed mood on the communication channel. Agree with your application. Li Mingze knew the reason for their application for retirement. The psychological pressure required for this mission was too great. Not only that, but also accept the torture of their conscience. After all, the Imperial Glory was carrying out a special mission to eliminate the enemy's war potential and destroy the enemy's colony. The success of each operation means that hundreds of millions and billions of people will die as a result. These crew members must receive psychological counseling after participating in this war, otherwise the possibility of their suicide is as high as 90%. You are not executioners, you are avenging the hundreds of millions of our dead citizens. Don't regard them as intelligent creatures, they are just lizards wearing power armor. Do you understand? Li Mingze shouted to the crew. I understand. They are all executioners who slaughtered our people. They are lizards wearing power armor, the crew shouted loudly. Very good, all crew members listen to orders. The Imperial Glory continues to the next target star system. Li Mingze waved his hand, and the Imperial Glory flashed and disappeared in the universe. In the ring world of Clem's capital, in a Gothic castle covering an area of 100 kilometers, dozens of guards wearing ancient armor escorted a group of officials in silver robes in the middle to the palace's main hall. Your Majesty, many officials knelt down and shouted after arriving at the main hall. Get up, the Emperor of the Clem Empire on the throne swept everyone with a fierce look. Thank you, Your Majesty. Many officials stood up and patted their robes. I heard that one of my fleets and a Titan were all destroyed in the battle to siege a warship of the Sith Empire, His Majesty the Emperor said in a lukewarm tone. That's right, Your Majesty, but that spaceship is the secret weapon of the Sith Empire. and its combat power is extremely strong, its defense is extremely strong, and it can withstand the impact of our Holy Grail Titan's planetary annihilation cannon. Its attack power can directly destroy one of our fleets. An official wiped the sweat and whispered. Humph, a bunch of trash, you can't even catch an enemy warship, what else can you do? I will personally take action and prepare to start my flagship Clem. The Emperor snorted coldly and inserted the cane in his hand into the floor in front of the throne. A series of golden lights began to spread from the gem at the top of the scepter to the floor, and soon golden stripes began to appear on the floor, and these stripes spread all the way to the entire palace. The secret key has been detected, and the Clem Empire flagship is ready to start. Please leave the area of 100 kilometers immediately without any relevant personnel. Soon, the alarm sounded from the palace. Tens of minutes later, the ground began to tremble slightly, and golden pillars stretched upward from the ground around the palace. These pillars covered with mysterious patterns extended upward and then bent and merged just above the palace, wrapping the entire palace tightly. Then, more pillars rushed out from the ground and closed together on the ground. In just 1 hour, a huge crescent-shaped warship appeared in the sky above the ring world. In the middle of the crescent was a sphere composed of countless intertwined metal strips, which protected the Gothic palace just now. The two sharp corners of the entire vertical crescent-shaped spacecraft were facing backwards, and at the bend were countless thruster nozzles. These nozzles continuously emitted golden flames to push this crescent-shaped spacecraft, which was 600 kilometers high, 90 kilometers wide, and 300 kilometers long, into the sky. In the palace located on the crescent-shaped Clem Titan sphere, where many officials had originally attended court, a series of egg-shaped cockpits rose from the ground. The guards around found an egg cabin and sat in it, and began to control the Clem Titan to fly out of the ring world. The Emperor of the Clem Empire sat on the throne, and metal vines wrapped around his body. After a few minutes, the Emperor of the Clem Empire was wrapped tightly. Consciousness has been connected, and the Clem is about to enter hyperspace. As the electronic sound of the system sounded inside the Clem, the entire Titan disappeared on the spot. Hundreds of light years away, the Sith Glory spacecraft was conducting orbital saturation bombardment on a newly discovered Clem colony star under the command of Mingze. This time, the Clem people learned their lesson. When the Imperial warship was just discovered, all the valuables and equipment were transported to the transport ship and fled to all directions. The Clem people who did not have time to escape hid in the shelter deep underground, and there was no living person left on the surface of the entire planet. This also made Mingze's bombardment much more boring. He continued to bomb here and could only blow up some buildings. In the interstellar era, the least valuable thing is the building. With the existence of construction robots, the time spent on various constructions is extremely short. The valuable targets worth bombing have been moved in advance, and even the important parts of the shipyard have been dismantled and transported away by the Clem people. Chapter 566, Capture Alive. Your Majesty, we have detected the approaching hyperspace fluctuations, and a warship is flying towards us. A crew member suddenly spoke up and pulled Mingze back from his gaze. Oh? Cancel the saturation bombardment and prepare for battle. Mingze's eyes lit up, and he finally waited for the reinforcements of the Clem people. Your Majesty, our main fleet and the super-standard fleet have broken through the Clem people's defense line and are heading towards us. Should we wait for them to join us before fighting the enemy? A crew member asked in a low voice. If we can't win, it's not too late to wait for reinforcements. Mingze rejected the crew member's suggestion. The guns on the left side of the Imperial Glory retracted to the back of the warship, and the armored plates covered by the dimensional armor closed again. The Imperial Glory just quietly floated in space waiting for the enemy to appear. A few hours later, lightning suddenly flashed in the deep space not far from the Imperial Glory. A golden Titan broke away from the hyperspace. This Titan was the flagship of the Clem people, the Clem. Following it, two more Clem Titans broke away from hyperspace. These two were the Clem Empire's Holy Sword and Holy Shield Titans. When they all arrived, another 100 Clem battleships sailed out from the Holy Sword and Holy Shield Titans. What a big formation! Are they here to catch us? Mingze's mouth curled up slightly. Your Majesty, don't underestimate the enemy. The opponent's 3 Titans' main guns can directly make our dimensional armor absorb full energy and upgrade to a 3-dimensional state. At that time, our battleship will become vulnerable, a crew member reminded Mingze. Sith Empire battleship, if you surrender now, We can still guarantee the lives of all your crew members, but if you don't surrender, you will be turned into powder with your battleship. Soon, the Imperial Glory received a communication video from the other side. Don't pay attention to them, just attack their flagship directly, spiral irregular maneuvers, and crash into their bodies. Li Mingze looked at the huge battleship that was hundreds of kilometers high. The Imperial Glory began to slowly accelerate, and in the air, it made an irregular spiral and rushed towards the Clem. At this time, the Clem people could no longer sit still. Particle beams gushed out from the Clem warships, flashing white light and rushing towards the Imperial Glory. However, due to the flexible movement of the Imperial Glory, very few of these attacks were effective. Seeing the distance to the Clem getting closer and closer, Li Mingze couldn't help but clench his fists. There are still 10 seconds before the impact. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, however, just when the countdown was about to end, the Imperial Glory suddenly stopped less than 100 meters away from the Clem, as if it had hid an invisible wall. What happened? Did the opponent's shield block this impact? Li Mingze asked puzzledly. You know, with their current speed and the mass of the Imperial Glory, under normal circumstances, no shield could withstand such a strong impact. No, sir. I detected a layer of repulsion on the outer layer of this warship. This layer of repulsion can prevent all metals from approaching it within 100 meters, a crew member shouted. Damn it, Li Mingze hammered the alloy cover of the protective cabin. At this distance, our antimatter missiles cannot attack its body. We are helpless, a crew member sighed. At this moment, 3 beams of light suddenly shot from the Clem Titan to the Imperial Glory. These 3 beams did not cause any damage to the Imperial Glory, but the Imperial Glory lost the ability to move. After a few seconds, the 3 beams pulled the Imperial Glory towards the port of the Clem. Your Majesty, the other side wants to capture us alive, a crew member said bitterly to Li Mingze. I know, Li Mingze whispered, and nervously watched his warship being slowly pulled through the holographic screen, gradually flying to a quarantine port with a heavy gate in front, until the entire ship entered the port. Start the special response plan, start the Trojan horse plan. As Li Mingze finished speaking, a cover suddenly opened at the bottom of the Imperial Glory, and a cylindrical box slid out from it. Li Mingze then cut off the connection with the body on the ship, and soon, a black shadow rushed out of the box that fell from the Imperial Glory. This black shadow was Li Mingze wearing a power armor, but this armor was the most advanced power armor of the Empire wrapped in dimensional armor. There was also a small antimatter bomb embedded in the abdomen of his body. The purpose of his body was, if the Imperial Glory was unfortunately captured by the enemy, then he would help the Glory escape. The Clem people naturally discovered the box that fell from the Imperial Glory. After a few minutes, hundreds of soldiers surrounded it, but when these soldiers came to the box, there was only an empty box left for them. The shrill alarm sounded throughout the Clem, and teams of fully armed soldiers ran quickly through the corridor. However, none of these soldiers noticed Li Mingze lying on the ceiling of the corridor. Relying on the optical stealth device, Li Mingze successfully deceived several teams of soldiers. He carefully followed these soldiers to the control center of the port. It was not that he did not want to blow up the Clem Titan directly, but this Titan was no longer powered by a reactor. Each Titan had countless reactors to provide energy support. It could rely on its huge size. Even if one reactor was blown up, at most it would lose a small part of the cabin around it. It was impossible to rely on a small antimatter bomb to blow up this flagship. So Li Mingze could only settle for the second best and rescue the Imperial Glory first. Target found. Fire. Li Mingze suddenly heard a roar from behind him. He realized that the damn Clem people had installed an anti-stealth module. Countless colored liquids fell from the ceiling of the corridor, and Li Mingze, who was originally in stealth mode, was instantly covered with colored liquid. Bullets shot out from the muzzles of the Clem soldiers and hit Li Mingze's armor crazily. There was no effect. Countless bullets fell on Li Mingze without even bouncing off, and fell straight to the ground. Switch to particle weapons. With the order from the captain of the Clem soldiers, all the solid bullets fired were turned into particle beams. But these particle beams, like bullets, hit Li Mingze like a stone sinking into the sea, without provoking the slightest reaction. Damn, how come the armor of the soldiers of this empire is so strong? Commander Clem said angrily. Of course, Li Mingze would not sit and wait for death, and he casually threw a boomerang forward. After seeing these boomerangs circle around the Clem soldiers, They all nailed to the wall behind them, without hitting any of the Clem soldiers. Ho ha! A burst of ridicule came from the Clem soldiers, and they looked at Li Mingze running back frantically as if he were a clown. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 567 Destruction. Beep, beep. After 3 crisp sounds, the boomerangs stuck in the wall suddenly turned into balls of fire. The huge explosion threw Li Mingze, who had not yet run far, out and hit the wall. The Clem soldier at the center of the explosion had already been vaporized. Damn, I didn't expect it to be so powerful. Li Mingze got up from the ground and quickly got into the control center through the huge hole blown open by the boomerang. The violent explosion that just happened had blown the tables and chairs in the control room into a mess. The soldiers in the entire control room were knocked unconscious before they could lock the controller. Li Mingze stepped over a Clem soldier lying on the ground and came to the control console. After several searches, Li Mingze finally found the switch that controlled the tractor beam and the gate of this port. Unfortunately, although the gate can be opened here, the tractor beam is an independent system that is completely controlled by the bridge of this battleship. However, Li Mingze found the location of the generator controllers of the 3 tractor beams in the database. Download all the maps, Li Mingze gently ordered the terminal, and soon the data stream began to appear on the console. A few seconds later, Li Mingze inserted a boomerang into the console and then turned away. He had to blow up the controller of the tractor beam to get the Imperial Glory out of trouble. Just as Li Mingze was busy in the Clem flagship, the Sith Empire's large army arrived. After a flash of light, the Sith Empire's supersized fleet appeared opposite the Clem fleet in the starry sky with the main fleet. Attack! The Emperor of the Clem Empire had already discovered this Sith Empire fleet. As soon as the Sith Empire fleet left the hyperspace, he decisively ordered an attack. Countless particle beams shot wildly at the Sith Empire fleet, while the Clem Sword Titan and the Aegis Titan also began to charge their planetary annihilation cannons. The 3 Titans from the Sith Empire blocked the front of the fleet and took all the attacks. The super weapons they carried also began to charge, and flashes of lightning began to flash in front of the Empire's Titan guns. We have received an encrypted message from the Imperial Glory. It requires us to transfer all energy to the shield immediately and retreat immediately. An officer in the Sith Empire flagship suddenly turned his head and said to Commander Eva, "Is it your Majesty's order?" Eva frowned, wondering what Li Mingze had in mind. "Yes, it is your Majesty's order," the officer nodded affirmatively. "Order all warships to fall back quickly and transfer all energy to the shield," Eva ordered loudly. Although she didn't know what Li Mingze's order was for, she chose to trust Li Mingze unconditionally. Tens of minutes later, the planetary annihilation cannons of the Holy Sword and Holy Shield Titans fired at the Imperial fleet. Just as the beam hit the Imperial Titan, a black warship suddenly rushed out of the flagship of the Clem Empire. It was the Imperial Glory. "Retreat! Retreat! I just threw away all the antimatter," Li Mingze ordered all the Imperial warships in the communication channel. The Imperial warships that received the order began to retreat frantically. "You must know that the antimatter carried by the Imperial Glory is enough to destroy a star. So much antimatter is no joke, it's really a death sentence." Just as the Imperial fleet was retreating frantically, the Emperor of the Clem Empire also noticed something was wrong. After feeling the energy spreading inside his warship, he stood up decisively and pressed down a scepter inserted in the floor. In an instant, the entire Clem began to disintegrate into 3 parts. The upper and lower crescent-shaped tip split from the main body, and the main body in the middle of the Clem suddenly ejected a dazzling light, pushing the main body out of the battlefield. The acceleration left blood at the corners of the mouths of the crew inside the Clem. One of the 2 abandoned corners was the location of the port where the Imperial Glory had just escaped. A few seconds later, the explosive energy gushed out of one of the angular holes and spread to the surroundings. The 2 Clem Titans following the flagship reacted at this time and wanted to speed up and leave, but it was too late. The huge energy bubble instantly swallowed the 2 Clem Titans. Next came the Clem battleship that followed the Titan, and then the dozens of Sith Empire battleships that fell behind because of their slow speed. All the battleships wrapped in the energy bubble were annihilated in an instant, and they could not even hold on for a few seconds. What was even more terrifying was that due to the huge amount of energy reaction, the battleships could no longer jump into hyperspace or open wormholes. All the ships could only try their best to escape outwards. They were racing against the god of death. Once they fell behind and were swallowed by the energy bubble, the result was imaginable. Like these battleships, the Imperial Glory was also fleeing frantically. Even if it was equipped with dimensional armor, it could not withstand the energy impact that was enough to destroy a star. Under this terrifying energy, any dimensional armor could only hold on for 2 seconds. On the other side, the Clem Titan was also accelerating frantically in the opposite direction of the Sith Empire fleet's escape. The energy bubble behind it was getting closer and closer. "Abandon all useless supplies and equipment on the battleship," Emperor Clem shouted to the ship-borne artificial intelligence. Soon, countless flashy decorative materials fell off the main body of the Clem, and various spare parts for maintenance were pushed into the universe from the warehouse. Water, food, entertainment facilities, and all disposable items were pushed into the universe by the Clem soldiers. After removing the decorative steel and a large amount of supplies from these warships, the Clem was actually 11% lighter. The speed of the Clem, which was lightened, suddenly increased. The Clem rushed forward like a stimulant. "Sith Empire, I'm not done with you," Emperor Clem shouted angrily in the hall of his palace. At this time, Mingze didn't know that Emperor Clem had escaped. He was now in a state of overwork. He regretted it. Why did he throw out all the antimatter for no reason? Now, not only was the enemy's fleet completely wiped out, but his own fleet would also be wiped out soon. So far, he has lost 103 battleships. Your Majesty, we have bad news. If we die in such a strong energy, there is a 30% chance that this part of the soul cannot be transmitted back, which means that we may lose all the memories after we traveled into this body, a crew member said cautiously. Chapter 568 Great Retreat. A few hours later, the remaining fleet of the Empire quietly floated at the outermost edge of the star system. In the explosion just now, the Empire lost a total of 220 battleships, which can be said to be a serious loss. However, this explosion destroyed 2 Titan-class battleships of the Clem people and seriously damaged their flagship. This is a very significant victory for the Sith Empire. You must know that the Clem people did not build Titan-class battleships every few years like the Empire did. It would take them at least tens of hundreds of years to build a Titan-class battleship. And this explosion of the Empire directly scrapped their 100 years of efforts, and the entire Clem Empire was left with only one seriously injured flagship. Let us observe 3 minutes of silence for the 1,540 Imperial soldiers who died this time. Mingze, who had returned to the Empire's flagship, the Imperial Sword, took off his helmet, put it on his chest, and bowed his head in silence for 3 minutes. May you rest in peace. Soldiers and officers also took off their helmets and bowed their heads to mourn for the dead soldiers. Fortunately, the Empire had already upgraded its fleet to a fully automated fleet with fewer members. Each battleship only needed a captain and 6 staff members, which resulted in only more than 1,000 casualties in this battle. At the same time, due to the destruction of the 2 main battleships of the Clem Empire and the destruction of the main fleet supporting the front line by the Imperial Glory, the entire Clem Empire's defense line was retreating step by step. The Sith Empire fleet, which was 3 times the number of the Clem Empire, was aggressive and kept biting the retreating Clem Empire fleet. In this way, the Empire's front line advanced nearly 1,000 light-years forward, biting off a large piece of the Clem Empire's territory. A few days later, over the Clem Empire's ring world, the Clem, which had removed all its external decorations, jumped out of hyperspace. The originally gorgeous Gothic battleship had become a bare rounded hull. Emperor Clem in the Clem Palace was furious. Damn the Sith Empire, I must kill them. The Emperor of Clem paced back and forth in front of the throne, cursing for more than half an hour. Your Majesty, our fleet on the front line is retreating step by step, and has lost 1,000 light-years of depth. If this continues, I'm afraid we might as well make peace with them. An officer in the hall stood up and said tentatively. You are a traitor to our Clem Empire. You are destroying the morale of the army here. Tell me, are you a spy of the Sith Empire? The Emperor of Clem walked up to him madly and lifted him up into the air. No. No, Your Majesty, the officer shouted in panic. At this time, he regretted it to death. Why did he dare to take this risk? But there is no regret medicine in this world. Even if he did, he would have no chance, because the Emperor's scepter had pierced his body. As the Emperor let go, The officer stared and unwillingly covered his stomach with his scepter stuck in his stomach and fell to the ground without a sound. Anyone who disturbs the morale of the army will suffer the same fate as him. Emperor Clem pulled out the scepter stuck in the officer's stomach and raised it high in the air, shouting at the officers and officials around him. The military and political officials knew that their emperor had been mentally affected by the defeat he had never suffered before, but they did not dare to remind him. Their Clem Empire had never suffered a defeat in the tens of thousands of years since it left the universe. Obviously, their emperor had collapsed after this defeat. No. It's not over yet. Our Clem Empire is invincible, Emperor Clem roared and sat back on his throne. Order all warships to withdraw to the ring world. We will abandon all colonies and attract the warships of the Sith Empire to the ring world to fight a decisive battle with us. When the time comes, we will use our super weapons to wipe out all the scum of the Sith Empire. The Emperor of the Clem Empire made a pinching gesture in the air with his hand. We are willing to follow your instructions. Many officers and officials hurriedly leaned over to express their sincerity. Dismissed, the Emperor of the Clem Empire waved his hand, and many military and political officials filed out. Not long after, the fleet of the Sith Empire found that the enemy they were facing had actually retreated. These Clem people abandoned their colony and withdrew all their warships to their capital star system. On the bridge of the Sword of the Empire, Mingze was discussing the direction of the next war with Eva and others, and suddenly an officer came over. Report to your majesty, the frontline intelligence department has sent back important information. The officer saluted at the door. Go ahead, Mingze waved his hand. According to the intelligence sent back by various frontline fleets, the troops of the Clem Empire are retreating. We sent reconnaissance ships to follow the retreating fleet of the Clem people for reconnaissance, and found that their fleets have all withdrawn to their capital star system, the officer reported loudly. Oh? The Clem people have all retreated? Could it be that they have some conspiracy? Mingze frowned slightly and asked in confusion. Your Majesty, their number of warships is seriously insufficient. Your destruction of their hinterland has greatly affected their logistic efficiency. The enemy is no longer able to support such a long line of defense, not to mention that our number of warships has risen to 3 times that of the enemy. And as their warships are constantly destroyed, this ratio is still growing. If this continues, our advantage will become greater and greater. They have no way to continue to hold on, so they retreated to the capital star system and wanted to rely on fortifications to defend the most important territory. Eva briefly summarized the dilemma currently faced by the Clem people. So, we should take advantage of the victory and take them down in one fell swoop. Eva slammed the table. No, I object. Tianyi said on the side. Oh? Why? Mingze turned his head curiously in the direction of Tianyi. Your Majesty, think about it, if we are at a disadvantage in the war, would you choose to give up all the territory and retreat to the defense ring world? Impossible. Because all our resources come from the supply of various colonies. Only when the colonies continue to provide us with resources can we continue to manufacture warships and supply the warships on the front line. In other words, once we give up the colony, it is equivalent to handing over the fruits of victory to others. Therefore, the Clem people will never give up their colony easily, Tianyi analyzed in a deep voice. Indeed, so, they want to lead us to Clem for a decisive battle. Mingze slammed the table. That's right, Your Majesty, the other party must have prepared a lot of traps for us on Clem, just waiting for us to step into them foolishly, so we must not fall for them, Tianyi said affirmatively. Chapter 569 Repaired Portal. Let me think about it. Mingze raised his palm, and the hall was instantly quiet. Tianyi's words make sense. Since the Clem people want to force us to go to their capital star system for a decisive battle, we must not follow their wishes. Mingze swept his eyes over the crowd. Immediately arrange for construction ships to set up a defense circle around the Clem capital star system. And mobilize 80% of the Empire's warships to the vicinity of the Clem Empire's capital, Mingze ordered Tianyi. Yes, Tianyi nodded. A few days later, the Empire's fleet gradually flew to the 5 star systems around the Clem star system. If you want to use hyperspace to go from the Clem capital to other places, you must pass through these 5 star systems. In these 5 star systems, 5 super fortresses began to be printed and built little by little. At the same time, 5 wormhole high-speed channels are also under intense construction. Once these projects are completed, the Clem capital star system will be blocked by the Empire's fortresses. 80% of the Empire's warships will also be divided into 5 parts and stationed in these 5 fortresses. Once the Clem people launch a surprise attack, the fleets of various fortresses can reach the attack site within a few hours through the wormhole high-speed channel. No matter which direction Clem's fleet chooses to attack, it can be surrounded by the Imperial fleet within a few hours. In this way, the Empire only needs to lock the Clem Empire in a cage and slowly develop. Sooner or later, the Clem Empire will take the initiative to attack due to lack of resources. At that time, they will experience the trap of the Sith Empire. On the other hand, the Emperor of the Clem Empire was very distressed that the Sith Empire actually saw through his plan. He has prepared various traps for the Sith Empire in his ring world, but the Sith Empire just won't be fooled. We must find a way to lead the Sith Empire's fleet into our trap. Emperor Clem walked back and forth in front of his throne. Your Majesty, I have a plan, an officer whispered cautiously. Oh? What plan? Tell me. Emperor Clem waved his hand with interest, asking the officer to come forward. My plan is this. The officer walked to the Emperor's ear and whispered. Ha ha ha. Good. This plan is good. The Emperor laughed and patted the officer on the shoulder. New star in the Sith Empire. Mingze, the supreme leader of the Empire, was welcomed in a secret building located 50 kilometers underground on New Star. Surrounded by many guards, Mingze slowly walked down from the train. When he arrived at the platform, he looked around and saw a fully armed Sith Empire Marine every 2 steps, and a special combat mecha every 10 meters. The defense work here is well done. Mingze clapped his hands and took off the gloves on his hands and handed them to Chu Lingjin beside him. Your Majesty, the research here is classified as the highest level of danger. We must ensure that no accidents will happen. The only way to leave this base is this suspended train, and there is a small antimatter bomb buried under our feet. The person in charge of the base pointed to the ground under the crowd. Zhang Jinyan and Chu Lingjin couldn't help but shudder when they heard this. They didn't expect that this group of crazy scientists would bury bombs under their feet. The scene where the antimatter explosion almost wiped out the fleet was still vivid in their minds. Very good, take me to see the top technology of Clem that you have restored. Mingze nodded with satisfaction and said to everyone. Your Majesty, please follow me. The person in charge bowed and led the way for Mingze and others. After bypassing the long passage, everyone walked for 5 minutes and passed dozens of checkpoints before arriving at a hemispherical hall wrapped in heavy alloy. The entire hall is 120 meters high, and a huge ring is hung in the center of the hall. Judging from the pattern of the ring, it is undoubtedly the portal of the Clem people. How is the repair of this portal? Mingze frowned and asked when he saw that there were still a lot of damage and burn marks on the outer shell of the portal. Your Majesty, the damage you see is just the decorations that the Clem people like to add to the equipment buildings, which have not been repaired yet. The main equipment inside this portal has been repaired by us, the person in charge hurriedly explained when he saw that Mingze's face was not right. But now there is a small problem, that is, the teleportation point of this portal we repaired has been locked, that is to say, we can only move it back to its original place to reopen it, and when it is opened, it can only connect to the place where the original Clem portal was connected. The only difference is that the energy originally provided by the Clem Empire has become provided by our side. The person in charge projected a hologram into the air and said, very good, as long as it can reach the Clem capital ring world, it will be enough. Mingze's face was happy. With this portal, the Empire has a sharp knife that pierces the opponent's heart. Order the troops to stand by, we are ready to reactivate this portal. Mingze ordered Qiuai beside him. Your Majesty, we can't transport it out. When it came, it was in fragments so it could be transported in by train, but now it has become a huge hole, and we can't transport it out by train, a scientist suddenly reminded. It doesn't matter, I will order the spacecraft to drill a passage from here to the surface of New Star. Mingze waved his hand. At this time, the efficiency of the Empire was reflected. Less than 2 hours after Mingze issued the order, the spacecraft that was specially used to dig underground passages had already arrived above New Star. Hundreds of lasers were fired crazily at the ground from the 200-gun ports on the belly of the spacecraft. The rocks on the ground were completely vaporized and sucked into the cargo hold behind the spacecraft through the exhaust system. 10 minutes later, 2 mechanical cranes penetrated into the hull from the top of the drilled base, lifted Clem's portal ring and raised it to the surface. On the ground, A dreadnought of the Empire had entered the atmosphere of Nuwa Star and was on standby. After the portal was lifted to the surface, it was directly stuffed into the dreadnought. As soon as the hatch was closed, the dreadnought lifted its bow upwards and suddenly accelerated towards the starry sky. The huge airflow caused by the thrusters at the rear of the battleship uprooted all the plants on the ground. It seemed that it would take a lot of money to restore the original appearance. The Milky Way chapter is about to end. I will sort out the plot and resume 3 updates on Saturdays and Sundays. Chapter 570, Rushing into the Climb Capital. The starting point of the Sith Empire ring world. The huge crater created by the explosion of the antimatter bomb has turned into a huge lake. 6 Empire dreadnoughts floated on the lake, and these 6 dreadnoughts aimed their guns at the huge metal building that had just been built not far away. Suddenly, the entire area was shrouded in a huge shadow, and a 500-kilometer-long warship slowly fell from the sky. The huge ship stirred the surrounding clouds, and the entire sky was shrouded by its huge body. The tens of thousands of gun turrets exposed on the ship made it clear that this big guy was definitely not an easy one to deal with. Following behind this behemoth were 3 dreadnoughts in parallel. When it was still 2 kilometers away from the ground, the 2 outermost dreadnoughts stopped in the air, while the one in the middle continued to descend. At this time on the ground, hundreds of millions of combat robots had also assembled into square formations, and each large square formation was dragging a metal box hundreds of meters long. These combat robots are different from the robots seen before. They have removed the shield modules on their bodies and all have thick armor layers added. This is specially prepared for the clan people who can tear the shield. In addition, heavy unmanned combat vehicles and heavy unmanned mechas are also lined up behind the robot square. At this time, the dreadnought has arrived above the metal building erected on the lake. The clan people's portal ring is slowly pulled by the tractor beam and falls in front of the metal building. Then the lake's surface vibrates, and metal plates rise from under the lake, turning the water leading to the land from the metal building into metal ground. The robot square seemed to have received some signal. All the robots marched in a long line with neat steps through the metal floating bridge to the front of the portal. In the viewing room at the bottom of the Sword of the Empire Titan, Mingze looked at the neat robot troops on the ground and took a switch from Tianyi beside him. As he gently pressed the switch, the metal ring hanging on the front of the metal building began to rotate slowly. The energy output power is 78%, which is within the safety threshold. The scientist behind Mingze looked at the screen and said to Mingze. At this time, a large amount of energy from the entire empire was sent into the portal through the energy transmission network. Is it necessary to use such a huge amount of energy? Mingze asked in confusion as he looked at the rising energy value. If so much energy is needed, wouldn't this technology be useless? No, Your Majesty, it doesn't take much energy to open the portal, but we need to create a shield for the portal. The amount of energy we provide determines the strength of the shield, so we have to use so much energy, the scientist explained on the side. Mingze nodded in understanding and said nothing more. At this time, a light film suddenly appeared in the portal ring. Mingze knew that the door to the heart of the Clam Empire, the Clam capital ring world, was opened. All troops set off. As Mingze shouted, all the robot troops walked into the portal in neat steps. The Clam ring world on the other side of the portal. A portal in a huge wasteland suddenly lit up, and a huge blue ball light rose from the portal. A blue light film enveloped the area of 100 kilometers around the portal. The several Clam bases responsible for protecting the portal were stunned. They did not activate the portal, so how could the portal suddenly open? Moreover, a shield rose from the portal. If it was the portal they opened, the shield should appear on the opposite side. No. It's an enemy attack. The commander stationed at the base finally reacted, but it was too late. Their base was already wrapped in the shield raised by the portal. Through the monitor, he could clearly see the Sith Empire battle robots constantly coming out of the portal. At this time, he had realized the seriousness of the situation. The Sith Empire actually used their portal to enter their ring world. Report to His Majesty the Emperor immediately, the commander shouted to his subordinates in panic. At this time, hundreds of thousands of the Empire's robots had already walked out of the portal. The huge metal box carried by the first robot phalanx was also dragged to the ring world. After a violent flash, Commander Clam found that he had lost control of all the monitoring facilities near the portal. This flash was specially prepared to paralyze the enemy's monitoring facilities. After the flash, the metal box lowered its head and drilled underground. As the drill bit on the head of the metal box drilled the soil, The body of the metal box began to emit high temperatures to vitrify the compacted soil around it, making the tunnel harder. Then all the robot troops poured into the underground passage and rushed forward. At the beginning, the Clem Empire certainly considered that someone might return to their capital ring world through the portal. So they deliberately built several defense bases around each portal, and equipped a large number of orbital weapons above the orbit of each portal. There was also a battleship naval port not far away. Any invaders would be annihilated bit by bit on this land. But they never expected that the other party would actually open the shield on their side, which means that now they only have the defense base available. At this time, the millions of troops in the defense base had just assembled. Armored vehicles drove out of the base, followed by countless Clem soldiers and giant quadruped mechas. Just as they left the base and prepared to go to the portal to fight the Empire's troops to the death, a shrill alarm suddenly sounded in their base. Not long after the alarm sounded, the thick armor plate under the base was drilled open. A box-shaped device drilled a hole in the wall next to it and left. However, batches of Sith Empire combat robots continued to pour out of the hole it drilled underground. These combat robots began to slaughter crazily after pouring into the base. The Clem soldiers left in the base were no match for these robots. In just 2 hours, the defense fortress was completely destroyed. When the base commander was about to detonate the base to perish together, he found that he had lost control of the base's main brain. In the room where the mainframe of the base was located, Eva took her hand off the mainframe and smiled disdainfully. At the same time, the second and third batches of robot troops had also passed through the portal, and the drillers they carried behind them began to dig tunnels frantically on the ground. A new era of tunnel warfare had begun, and the Clem people were completely unprepared for this tactic that originated from the ancient Chinese civilization. Chapter 571 Rotating Ring World. 60 kilometers away from the portal, a Clem unit was rushing towards the portal quickly. Suddenly, the Clem soldiers felt a slight vibration under their feet. The vibration lasted only a few seconds and then disappeared. Everyone thought it was the vibration caused by the explosion. Just a few seconds after the vibration disappeared, the team was engulfed by countless explosions. The explosions from the ground threw the soldiers into the air. A large number of armored vehicles also exploded continuously because the fragile bottom armor was penetrated. In a few seconds, the entire unit was half crippled. At this time, the surrounding ground suddenly collapsed, and a number of combat robots rushed up before the unit could react. Suddenly, the entire battlefield was covered by the artillery fire of the Sith Empire robots. Before this Clem unit could organize a counterattack, it was destroyed by the robots that poured out like a tide. After the last Clem soldier was killed, the robot unit turned around and returned to the tunnel, and then the entrance of the tunnel collapsed. Such things happened from time to time within a radius of 100 kilometers under the shield of the portal. The Clem troops rushing to the portal from various fortresses were wiped out by the robot troops of the Empire without knowing why. On the other side of the portal, Mingze looked at the victory report sent back from the front line and couldn't help but smile. Damn, if I had known that tunnel warfare was so useful, I should have used tunnel tactics extensively in previous battles. So many Imperial soldiers died in vain. Tianyi, add this tactic to the training courses of Imperial soldiers. Mingze remembered that he had only sent large troops to the battlefield in previous battles, which was really stupid. On the other side, Emperor Clem was so angry about the tunnel warfare of the Sith Empire that he smashed the cup. Your Majesty, if we don't find a way to stop the troops of the Sith Empire, as the portal is open for longer and longer, our ring world will be overwhelmed by the troops of the Sith Empire sooner or later, a minister said worriedly. I want to kill them too, but they are running around like rats underground, and with a shield raised by the portal, even if we can scan their location, it is difficult to attack them, even if they leave the range of the shield. By the time our weapons penetrate the ground and attack the tunnel, they will have already gone far away. Emperor Clem sighed depressedly while sitting on the throne. As the creator of this portal shield, he certainly knows the abnormal advantage of this shield that the more energy it provides, the stronger it is. However, it is actually very simple to destroy this shield. Just like the Sith Empire did before, just blow up this portal from underground. But the damn Sith Empire's digging robots are constantly digging away this oil under the shield, allowing the shield to cover downwards continuously, and soon the entire shield will become a huge sphere. If we use the Clem Titan to fire the main gun from the outside of the ring world now, it would be a feasible method to directly wipe out this ring world. But this will destroy the overall structure of the ring world. If he doesn't play it well, this ring world may be destroyed by himself, and the Sith Empire will win without a fight. Your Majesty, do you still remember the biggest disadvantage of this shield? An official reminded cautiously. I remember that this shield cannot move. If it moves too fast, it will not be able to remain stable. Emperor Clem's eyes lit up when he said this. There is no absolutely still point in the universe. All objects are moving. Therefore, the coordinate points in this article are determined based on the black holes in the middle of each galaxy and the surrounding pulsars. Assuming that this portal is only relatively still, it cannot be applied with a speed exceeding the upper limit of the Earth's revolution speed. I am tired. That's right, Your Majesty. We just need to let the ring world revolve around the star. Once the speed reaches the upper limit of the portal, the transmission will end. The official nodded and affirmed. Prepare to start the propulsion device of the ring world. Emperor Clem pulled the scepter from the ground. After a few hours, the armor plates on the outside of the ring world suddenly began to lift outwards piece by piece, and thrusters stretched out from under the armor plates. The ring world of the Clem Empire is different from the ring world of the Sith Empire. Since there are no relics of ancient civilizations, the ring world of the Clem Empire is completely built by the Clem Empire itself, by hollowing out a large number of planets. The ring world of the Clem Empire is a huge ring with an inner ground width of only 300 kilometers. In order to save materials, the entire ring world is extremely close to the star. The side facing the star is composed of solar panels. This design not only resists the scorching light of the star to keep the ring world at a suitable temperature, but also provides a huge amount of energy for the ring world. It is precisely because of this that this small Dyson ring, that is, the ring world, has the possibility of rotation. The propulsion devices spread all over the outer side of the ring world were originally designed for the migration of the ring world, but now they are just in use. As these thrusters continue to eject flames, the ring world of the Clem Empire begins to slowly rotate around the star. The speed of rotation continues to increase, and the portal begins to show abnormalities. The portal light film that was originally as calm as the surface of the water suddenly begins to ripple like a stone falling into it. What happened? Seeing the abnormality of the portal, Li Mingze hurriedly asked the scientists beside him. Your Majesty, we are checking. The scientists were sweating profusely, and red exclamation marks began to appear on the screen in front of them. We found the reason. The ring world where the portal at the other end of our portal is located is rotating at high speed. The connection between the two portals has begun to become unstable, the scientist replied solemnly. Has the Clem Empire found a way to crack it? No, this portal was originally invented by them. They must have a way to crack it. Li Mingze frowned and sighed. It doesn't matter if the invasion operation fails. On the ring world of Clem's capital, the blue shield that originally covered the ground suddenly began to flash violently, and then suddenly disappeared, but soon reappeared. Haha, good, very good. The connection of the portal is already extremely unstable. Clem's emperor sat on the throne of his flagship and looked at the picture on the screen with satisfaction. Keep speeding up and make the ring world rotate faster. Emperor Clem seemed to see the dawn of victory. Is it only you, the Sith Empire, who can use the portal? As long as the connection of the portal is interrupted, he will push the antimatter bomb to the side of the door, then stop the rotation of the ring world, and push the antimatter bomb into the portal. Chapter 572, Clem's Secret Weapon. Just when the portal was about to collapse, the Emperor of Clem suddenly saw that the shield that had been flickering had returned to normal. What's wrong? Why is the portal stable again? Emperor Clem shouted to his men. Your Majesty, the Sith Empire may have used its huge computing power to rewrite the calculation program of the portal. The reception efficiency of the portal is higher, and the portal has stabilized again. An officer looked at the data on the terminal in his hand, and his face was a little ugly. Speed up. Keep accelerating the ring world. Emperor Clem took the scepter and smashed it hard on the ground. No, Your Majesty, this is the maximum speed that the ring world thruster can reach. The officer shook his head and said, order all warships to fire tractor beams and use the maximum power to pull the ring world to rotate, Emperor Clem said as he inserted the scepter into the floor. The huge hull of the Clem began to turn its bow and aimed its belly at the ring world below. Several tractor beams shot out from the belly of the Clem, and then the thrusters at the rear of the Clem began to spew out flames crazily, driving the Clem to slowly accelerate forward. At the same time, hundreds of thousands of Clem warships also rushed to the outside of Clem ring world. After firing the tractor beams on the warships towards the ring world, they also began to accelerate together. The ring world was dragged by hundreds of thousands of warships and rotated faster and faster. Soon the shield of the portal was broken and the light curtain in the portal disappeared. Success! Clem's soldiers cheered. The portal had been closed, and the Sith Empire's troops could not reinforce here in a short time. After the portal was closed, several spaceships loaded with antimatter bombs quickly flew to the front of the portal and waited patiently. Okay, order all warships to fly backwards and shut down all the ring world thrusters. Emperor Clem wiped his palms expectantly. When the portal reopened, he would throw the antimatter bomb into the portal. By then, the capital of the Sith Empire on the other side would be blown into ruins by the antimatter bomb. He didn't plan to take a large ring world of the Sith Empire. He would blow it up first. If he dragged it on, their Clem Empire would be destroyed. The speed of the ring world slowly slowed down under the pull of many warships, but there was no movement of the portal. At this time, the position where the portal was originally placed on the ring world of the Sith Empire had become empty. The portal had been hoisted back into the cabin by the Titan. This only intact portal would become a valuable sample for the Empire to crack the portal technology. On the other hand, the Emperor of the Clem Empire also guessed that the Sith Empire should have destroyed the portal. He was so angry that he smashed the table and then there was no further news. At the same time, the portal opened by the Sith Empire on the Clem ring world also turned into fragments in a burst of explosions and flames. The Sith Empire's evil plan to invade the Clem Empire was completely ended, and the Sith Empire's robot troops left on the Clem ring world also hide underground. Because they drilled too deep, the Clem people had no way to deal with the remaining Sith Empire robot troops. Unless they took the initiative to show up, the Clem Empire could only monitor their movements at any time. The Sith Empire and the Clem Empire fell into a strange truce again, and both sides tacitly kept their troops in place. A few days later, Mingze suddenly received an urgent communication from the intelligence department. Without thinking too much, Mingze switched his body and flew to the location given by the intelligence department. On a military planet in Clem, a Sith Empire dreadnought slowly landed from the sky onto a spacecraft landing platform of a base located in a canyon. Because the platform could not support the heavy body of the dreadnought could only hover above the platform. Mingze flew into the base from the dreadnought in a shuttle. The shuttle passed through the narrow underground passage of the base and came to an internal hangar. At this time, the hangar was already filled with various materials of the Sith Empire, and a large number of staff and soldiers were busy in the hangar. Seeing Mingze coming, the Minister of Intelligence and several officials who sent a communication to Mingze hurriedly stepped forward. Your Majesty, something is wrong. Before Mingze spoke, the Minister of Intelligence said loudly. Oh? What happened? Mingze frowned and walked in front of the team towards the base. Your Majesty, our intelligence personnel found a deleted document when sorting out the data of the Clem base, but the document was not deleted completely. Our technicians restored the document and found the secret weapon that the Clem people had been hiding, the intelligence minister said as they came to a room isolated by a series of isolation doors. It's here. The document was found in a storage device in a corner. It should have been accidentally left behind by the Clem people when they evacuated. Your Majesty, please look, the minister said as he pressed a button on a console, and a holographic image appeared in the air. The familiar figure of the Clem appeared in the image. The warship was embedded in the Clem people's ring world with the help of a mechanical arm. Then the Clem people's ring world began to deform. The original ring became 4 smaller rings that covered the entire star from 4 different angles. Then, the light of the star suddenly dimmed for a few seconds, and the flames on the star also shrank for a short period of time. Then there was a demonstration screen. A straight line spanned half of the Milky Way and directly shattered a planet at the other end into fragments. What kind of weapon is this? Mingze opened his mouth wide. You know, it takes 50,000 years to fly across most of the Milky Way, and according to the time calculated in this video, it only takes 1 week for another planet to be destroyed. This weapon, the Clem people call it the Hyperspace Star Crusher. We analyzed that its principle may be to directly use hyperspace to create an ultra-long conduit, and then launch the extracted stellar energy into the conduit, so this energy attacked the target planet within a week in hyperspace at the speed of light that our spacecraft cannot reach, the Minister of Intelligence explained. This is impossible. How can a simple energy determine when to jump out of hyperspace, and how can they jump out of hyperspace? Mingze was a little puzzled. We don't know how it was implemented, but this document records that the Clem people have completed the construction of this weapon, and it can be put into use after a short debugging. The Minister of Intelligence said bitterly. Chapter 573, Falling into Trap. They must be stopped. Li Mingze instantly imagined the scene of his capital being attacked by energy that suddenly emerged from hyperspace. As long as the super weapon of the Clem people still exists, he will not be at ease. This weapon is like the sword of Damocles hanging over his head. Order all fleets to converge at the M02 star system. We are ready to launch the final general attack on the Clem Empire. Li Mingze summoned Tianyi and ordered. Yes, Your Majesty. Tianyi nodded and disappeared. 2 days later, all the fleets of the Empire gathered at the M02 star system fortress. A total of 10 million destroyers, 3 million cruisers, 200,000 battleships, 5,000 dreadnoughts, and 3 Titan-class battleships formed a super fleet neatly arranged in the air with no end in sight. Countless fighters flew out from the battleships and kept circling in the air. This was the pilots of these fighters doing warm-up activities before the final decisive battle. The last to arrive were the Empire's alien fleet and Tiger Shark-class battleships. The 2 warships flew to the front of the Empire's fleet. They would serve as cannon fodder and interfere with the enemy in this battle. Li Mingze himself also came to the bridge of the Sword of the Empire. He would personally command this battle that would determine the final ownership of the galaxy. Behind him stood Tianyi, Eva, Qiyu, and a group of marshals and generals. At the same time, the scene of this decisive battle would be broadcast live to the entire Empire and the member states of the Galactic Alliance in real time. Dear citizens of the Empire and people of all ethnic groups in the Galactic Alliance, we will have the final decisive battle with the Clem Empire. This decisive battle is about the final ownership of the galaxy. In the end, will it be our Sith Empire that stands at the top of the galaxy, or will the Clem Empire turn the tables and become the final winner? Everything will be revealed soon. Citizens of the Sith Empire, bless your country. Long live the Sith Empire. Li Mingze's figure appeared on screens and portable terminals throughout the galaxy, and his resolute face was imprinted in the minds of all citizens of the Sith Empire and citizens of the member states of the Galactic Alliance. The Sith Empire will win. Long live His Majesty the Emperor. People's roars rang out in all colonies of the Sith Empire. Even the Imperial rebels and resistance forces hiding in the deep mountains and forests and barren planets all blessed the Sith Empire. If the Sith Empire lost, they would not even have the chance to rebel. According to the usual nature of the Clem people, they would definitely slaughter them all. I hereby announce that the Imperial fleet is setting off. Li Mingze stood in front of the camera and raised the command sword in his hand and said loudly. Then tens of millions of warships of the Imperial fleet disappeared into the starry sky in countless lightning flashes. Clem Empire Ring World. One by one, Clem warships took off from the military port. The Clem Empire had just detected a large number of unknown targets coming through hyperspace. The Clem people knew that the general offensive of the Sith Empire had finally arrived, and this battle was related to whether they could continue their civilization. The Clem Titan also took off with 2 other Titans to an empty space outside the ring world, and behind them were nearly 10 million Clem Empire warships. Because a large number of warships were destroyed in the battle with the Sith Empire, even if all the fleets retreated back to the ring world, most of the warships of the Clem Empire were still lost. So the Clem Empire had to temporarily convert all its transport ships into warships. In addition to adding some weapons, these transport ships were also loaded with a large number of carrier-based aircraft. But these are just tricks. The real killer of the Clem Empire is the main gun of the Clem, which they have never used. The information found by the intelligence department of the Sith Empire in the abandoned military base of the Clem people is of course fictitious. That kind of weapon is not something that their technology can produce. The Clem people secretly uploaded a fictitious weapon information to a military base they abandoned and then deleted it, but it was not completely deleted and could be restored through technology. This is done to force the Sith Empire to come to their ring world and fight a decisive battle with them. This is their home ground. The defensive weapons on the ring world can offset a small part of the Sith Empire fleet, and the Clem people only need to hold on until the super weapon of the Clem is launched, and the scales of victory in this battle will fall to them. The Sith Empire, which was attracted by the false intelligence, is still in the dark. In order to completely solve the problem, Li Mingze even transferred all the surrounding Imperial fleets to participate in this final decisive battle. If this fleet is lost here, the Sith Empire will face the dilemma of having no fleet available, and the Sith Empire's dominance in the Galactic Alliance will also collapse. The remaining warships of the Sith Empire will only be able to protect the Empire's own colonies, and the Empire will lose control over all member countries. At that time, the Clem Empire will naturally be able to turn the tables, which is what Emperor Clem hopes for. The time, the place, and the people are all on my side. Sith Empire, you are doomed to lose, Emperor Clem sneered while sitting on the throne of his flagship. Layers of metal stretched out from under the throne and wrapped him in it. After a long 5-hour wait, the Sith Empire's fleet finally passed through the void between the two star systems and arrived at Clem's capital star system, the Leiden star system. Your Majesty, we are about to jump out of hyperspace. Do we need to let the star fortress be teleported here? Eva asked Li Mingze in the bridge of the Sword of the Empire. No need. The star fortress is our trump card against the Zerg. It has only 4 teleports left. We can't waste this time on the Clem people. Don't worry, I have another secret weapon. Li Mingze showed a sinister smile. Everything was under his control. No matter what trump card the Clem people had, they would be doomed to fail. Yes, Your Majesty, Eva nodded. As long as Li Mingze had another plan, they must not lose this battle. Prepare to jump out of hyperspace. Countdown. 3, 2, 1. As the countdown of Tianyi ended, the Imperial fleet suddenly appeared in the starry sky, facing the assembled Clem fleet. All weapons fire at full power, Li Mingze shouted, and the warships of the Imperial fleet did not consider the range factor at all, and fired crazily in the direction of the Clem Imperial fleet. With the cover of this barrage, all the Sith Empire warships began to accelerate crazily and force towards the direction of the Clem Imperial fleet. Seeing the densely packed warships of the Sith Empire, Emperor Clem smiled happily. He did not expect that the Sith Empire would be so cooperative and send so many warships at once to die. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 574 Chain Shrinking Cannon. The main gun of the Clem has begun to lock onto the target, and the charging is about to be completed. A soldier's report came from the palace of the Clem. Emperor Clem stood up from his seat, and with a snap of his fingers, a beautiful melody sounded in the palace, and the wall in front of him turned into a holographic screen, on which was the Sith Empire fleet right in front of the Clem. Emperor Clem knew that with the firing of his main gun, the Sith Empire fleet would be completely destroyed, and then it would be the moment for him to lead the fleet to counterattack. The main gun has been charged, and the chain molecular spacing crusher has been fired. With a loud roar from the soldier, Emperor Clem put his hands behind his back and looked at the Sith Empire fleet that was rushing not far away. A dazzling blue light shot out from below Emperor Clem's sight and rushed towards the alien warship at the front of the Sith Empire fleet. When this blue light hit the alien warship, something happened that shocked all the Sith Empire soldiers and officers. The alien warship that was hit began to shrink continuously. During the shrinking process, the hull of the alien warship began to collapse continuously. The last explosion turned it into a pile of debris. However, the blue light did not stop moving forward, but split into several beams and shot towards the surrounding warships. What happened to the alien warship? Li Mingze was shocked and asked Tianyi hurriedly. Your Majesty, I just scanned and found that the distance between the molecules of the alien warship was reduced. The size of the entire warship began to shrink continuously, but because we equipped this alien warship with a hyperspace engine, the large amount of energy stored in the hyperspace engine cannot be reduced, and the alien warship was blown up, Tianyi explained hurriedly. What kind of person can think of turning this technology into a super weapon? Li Mingze opened his mouth in shock when he heard Tianyi's explanation. Why can't this technology that can shrink objects be used to make weapons? However, the effect of this weapon that can spread is also very powerful. In just a few seconds, hundreds of thousands of alien warships have been destroyed. Does this weapon have any weaknesses? Li Mingze asked with a frown. Yes, Your Majesty. The energy required for the spread of this weapon comes from the energy released after the object is shrunk. Once the object is shrunk and no energy is released, this spread will stop, Tianyi replied. Li Mingze understood instantly that this weapon was originally designed for the fleet on the technological side. Now all warships store a lot of energy. Once the warships are reduced in size, These energies cannot be reduced accordingly. The attacked warships will self-destruct during the shrinking process, providing energy for the spread of this weapon. Order the alien fleet to start self-melting, Li Mingze snorted and ordered the red dot he brought with him. The red dot lying on the ground whimpered twice and closed his eyes. The alien warships in front of the Imperial fleet suddenly began to surge. Then bursts of explosions came from the bodies of these alien warships, and all the alien warships were blown into liquid all over the sky. That's right, all the alien warships transferred their stored acid to the vicinity of the hyperspace device, dissolving the outer shell of the hyperspace device. The energy stored in the hyperspace device was instantly released outward, blowing the aliens to pieces. If the energy of the hyperspace device could not be released at will, these alien warships would not have to be sacrificed at all. However, the effect of their sacrifice was very good. The blue beam that was originally spreading seemed to have suddenly lost its target and gradually dissipated in the air, allowing the Imperial warships following the alien warships to avoid this fatal attack. Otherwise, the consequences would be disastrous. Why? How did the Sith Empire discover the shortcomings of our weapon? Emperor Clem roared angrily when he saw the beam disappear. Even if the reason for the self-destruction of the first warship could be known through scanning, how could the other party discover the weakness of this weapon in such a short time? This question has been deeply buried in Emperor Clem's heart until it became an unsolved mystery in the end, and Li Mingze never thought about why Tianyi could know the weakness of this weapon. Seeing that the super weapon did not have the expected effect, Emperor Clem had no choice but to order all the warships to retreat to the attack range of the Ring World Fortress cannon and wait for the next attack from the Sith Empire. At this time, the Clem warships had no choice but to retreat, because this super weapon had a fatal weakness, that is, it needed to be recharged for 3 days after being used once before it could be used again. Now they had no choice but to retreat first. Li Mingze found that the Clem warships were constantly retreating, and he knew that the Clem people's attack that could make the warships smaller could not be launched in a short time. Seizing this favorable opportunity, Li Mingze decisively ordered all the warships of the Empire to move forward at full speed and strive to end the battle as soon as possible. Who knows when the Clem people's super weapon can be used again? The fleet of the Sith Empire quickly rushed to the front of the Clem Empire fleet, and various weapons of both sides fired at each other frantically. One after another, fighter planes flew out of the warships of both sides and rushed towards the fleet of the other side in the rain of artillery on the battlefield. There were constantly battleships of the Clem Empire being swept by the beam cannons of the Sith Empire warships, and they were cut into 2 pieces by the lazy waste in a violent explosion. Similarly, the shield of the Sith Empire warship was torn apart by the attack of the Clem Empire warship. The entire warship was melted by the particle beam and turned into flying space junk in the explosion. As the Imperial fleet approached, the Titans of both sides also fought together. The super weapons of the 3 Titans of the Empire all finished charging, and 3 shells were fired at the Titan of the Clem Empire. Just as the shells were about to hit, the Titan of the Clem Empire suddenly turned its hull into thousands of small warships and scattered around. The shells shot in light passing through a mist and passed through the body of the Clem Titan. When the 3 shells were about to miss the 3 Clem Empire Titans, they were suddenly detonated by the Empire remote control. 3 gravity cannons were detonated in the middle of the Clem Empire Titan, but unfortunately, because they did not touch a large mass object, the gravitational wave disappeared after spreading for a distance. After the gravitational wave disappeared, the small spaceships scattered by Clem Titan regrouped together, and then thousands of particle beams shot out from Clem Titan, hitting the shield of the Imperial Titan crazily. Just when the shield of the Sith Empire Titan was about to collapse under the attack of Clem's particle cannon, a black battleship suddenly shot out from the Imperial fleet and instantly sank into the body of Clem Titan. This battleship was the Imperial Glory. Knowing the power of the Imperial Glory, Clem Titan instantly dispersed again the moment the Imperial Glory sank into its hull. The attack on the Imperial Titan also stopped instantly. "Quick, take the opportunity to attack the clone of the Clem Titan," Li Mingze shouted in the fleet communication. The scientists of the Sith Empire discovered that the Clem Titan used the magical armor. When the Clem Titan remained intact, this armor could transmit the attack to all armors, just like a physical shield. But once the Clem Titan disintegrated, the defense of these small spaceships would be greatly reduced. Chapter 575 Monster Invasion. However, the Clem people seemed to have guessed that the Sith Empire would take advantage of this moment to launch an attack. The other two Titans hurriedly accelerated to block the disintegrated Titan and the Sith Empire Titan, so that the weapons of the Sith Empire Titans attacked the two intact Titans. Your Majesty, our fleet is suffering increasing losses under the attack of the fortress artillery of the Clem Empire's ring world. When will the killer you prepared arrive? Qiuyu looked at the battle losses and asked Li Mingze anxiously. Soon. Yes, it has arrived, Li Mingze said with a happy look on his face. Suddenly, a planet appeared in the universe with ray energy mist outside the star system of the Clem Empire's capital. The surface of this planet is covered with thick metal, and 36 huge spires with a height of 130,000 meters are evenly distributed on the metal armor. What is this? Qiuyu asked puzzledly as she looked at the planet that appeared. In her impression, the Sith Empire did not have the ability to build planetary-class battleships. Is this a product of the Science Committee? Tianyi, turn on the shielding device of all soldiers' power armor, Li Mingze shouted to Tianyi. Yes, Your Majesty, Tianyi nodded, and the Sith Empire soldiers suddenly found a small green light on their power armor. Unlock its controller and start the amplification device, Li Mingze said in a deep voice with his hands folded to his chest. Yes, Your Majesty, Tianyi nodded again. The spikes on the metal planet not far from the Sith Empire fleet suddenly began to deform, and the spires split into 5 petals, and blue electric light emanated from these spires. Civilization Devourer, long time no see, Li Mingze pressed a button on the console, and a holographic screen appeared in the bridge, and a purple human face emerged in the holographic screen. Long time no see, Great Majesty, Civilization Devourer replied in a slightly respectful tone. It's time to show your value. Do you see those warships not far away? Use your ability to control the soldiers on those warships. Let them kill each other, Li Mingze pointed to the Clem fleet not far away. Yes, Your Majesty, after the planet Devourer said this, Li Mingze closed the communication. A few minutes later, the Clem Empire warship, which was originally entangled in a fierce battle with the Sith Empire fleet, suddenly stopped all its actions. At this time, inside the Clem, the Emperor of Clem suddenly felt that the surroundings had become quiet. Puzzled, he touched the metal shell that protected his body and stood up from the throne. Why are you suddenly silent? Where are the people? Emperor Clem shouted to the people around him, patting the closed warship control cabin from time to time. Suddenly, a series of harsh metal friction sounds rang out, and the warship control cabins in the palace hall suddenly opened in unison, and hideous monsters crawled out of the control cabins one by one. Damn it! Damn it! Emperor Clem cursed twice in horror, turned around and pulled out the scepter from the floor. After he twisted the scepter twice, it split into 2 parts and 2 light blades appeared. At this time, the monsters rubbed their hind legs on the floor twice, and then rushed towards Emperor Clem quickly. Emperor Clem gritted his teeth and rushed towards the monsters. At the same time, the scepter in his hand turned twice in the air, creating a circle of light. Die? After Emperor Clem slashed a blade of light through the abdomen of a monster, he inserted the other end of the scepter into the head of another monster with the side of his body. The 2 monsters screamed and slid out, and the remaining monsters stayed and watched for a moment before rushing up again. Emperor Clem began to swirl the scepter frantically, creating circles of light in the air, and the 2 monsters that rushed up were instantly decomposed. At the same time, the world in the eyes of these monsters was not like this. The group of soldiers were originally controlling the Clem to fight, and suddenly heard the roar of the monster outside the control cabin. Many soldiers hurriedly retreated from the control cabin, and then they saw a monster chewing their emperor's body in its mouth. The angry soldiers drew their sabers and rushed towards the monster, but unexpectedly, the monster ejected 2 sharp blades from both hands, cutting the abdomen of one of the 2 who rushed in first, and piercing the head of the other. The remaining few hesitated for a moment and rushed forward again with their knives. Tragedy reappeared. The 2 soldiers who rushed in the front were directly cut into several sections by the flying blades. Kill it to avenge your majesty. The remaining soldiers did not retreat. They shouted and rushed towards the monster again. At this time, Emperor Clem took a deep breath as he looked at the monster rushing again, and rushed forward again with his scepter. He now knew that although these monsters were afraid, they would not stop until they killed him. Either they died or he died. You must know that although he is the emperor, his military power is not vegetarian. Emperor Clem, who grew up in the army since childhood, can be said to have a rare single-person combat power in the Clem Empire. In addition, with a highly protective imperial robe and a scepter weapon, Even opponents of the same level as him cannot defeat him. After dodging several monster attacks, Emperor Clem smashed the scepter on the ground, and all the objects around him floated up. This is a small function on his scepter that can reverse the gravity of the surrounding environment. While these monsters were floating in the air, Emperor Clem began to swing his scepter and kill them. One by one, the monsters were cut open, their heads were cut off, and their bodies were hit by the scepter and flew to the side and hit the wall. In just a few minutes, the hall of the palace was left with only the corpses of monsters and blood all over the floor. Emperor Clem was also hit by more than 10 claws, but his imperial robe offset all these attacks, so he was not injured. Your Majesty. Your Majesty. It's bad. The whole spaceship is full of monsters. It must be the work of the Sith Empire. At this time, a soldier rushed into the palace from the door with a rifle in his hand. The whole spaceship is full of monsters. Emperor Clem was shocked. He thought he could win this battle, but he didn't expect that the Sith Empire not only cracked his super weapon, but also created so many monsters in his Titan. We survivors have formed a team. Your Majesty, follow me, the soldier said and walked forward with Emperor Clem. Suddenly, Emperor Clem saw a scratch on the soldier's arm. The scratch seemed to be poisoned, and the blood vessels around it had turned purple. You are infected. Emperor Clem calmly flicked out the light blade of his scepter and asked in a deep voice, I don't have any water. I don't have any water. Why is the subscription getting worse day by day? 3 updates are not as good as 2. I am upset. I will update twice. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.